Good evening, all, and welcome to day three of Nasscom Future Forge. I'm Nihal Pandya from Nasscom, and I'm thrilled to be here with you once again. I would like to start the day by thanking all industry volunteers who have spent endless hours contributing to building out the 3 days of vertical deep dive track. This has been a true spirit of collaboration. As we all know, ecosystem collaboration is the key to driving any country's growth. Various stakeholders, including large corporates driving open innovation programs, investors, and government, play a pivotal role in this growth journey. Indian government has been leading the growth for startups in multifold ways with various policies, grants, international delegations, to name a few. Two key initiatives I would like to highlight today includes DeepTech Startup Policy and National Research Foundation Bill 2023. The National Deep Tech Startup Policy serves as a comprehensive framework to address the challenges faced by deep tech startups and provide definitive policy intervention to enhance the ecosystem. Recognizing the significance of deep tech in driving innovation, economic growth, and societal development, this policy outlines a vision for the Indian deep tech ecosystem. India's deep tech vision encompasses three key pillars: securing India's economic future, progressing towards knowledge-driven economy, and bolstering national capabilities and sovereignty. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all of you who shared inputs for India's deep tech startup policy. NRF 2023 is another great initiative by the government aimed at revolutionizing India's research ecosystem and catalyzing the country's emergence as a world-class knowledge powerhouse. NRF is at the vanguard of India's resurgence in research and innovation. The NRF's vision extends to fostering investments from both private and public sector entities, further accelerating India's research ecosystem growth. We have had, coming back to the event, we have had 2 incredible days of exploration, innovation, and inspiration, and have come a long way on this remarkable virtual journey of building India's deep tech quotient. In the past 2 days, we have deepened our understanding of the key facets of deep tech: discovery, innovation, and product application. Today, we are diving into ecosystem and empowerment, the final chapter of our virtual deep tech journey, where we complete the puzzle by focusing on the ecosystem that supports these innovations and the empowerment that fuels the deep tech engine. We will explore the critical role of funding in advancing deep tech research and products, examining policy interventions that bolsters the deep tech ecosystem, and discuss strategies for nurturing talent in this rapidly evolving landscape. The 3 days of virtual deep dive will followed by the in-person event on 7th and 8th November 2023 at Taj Yeshwantpur, Bangalore. Focused on the theme accelerating deep tech product growth, the flagship Nasscom Future Forge 2023, formerly known as NPC or Nasscom Product Conclave, in its 20th year has completely rebranded to drive and showcase deep tech innovation in India. You can register for in-person event using the link posted in chat section. This year, we have over 480 deep tech startups, 300 enterprises, 120 speakers, 50 showcases, 100 investors, and 1,500 delegates attending as the pioneering deep tech startups assume the spotlight, showcasing their groundbreaking innovations deeply rooted in advanced technology. For today's session, we have a lineup of exceptional speakers and experts ready to share their insights. So get ready for a day filled with discussions that will shape the future of deep tech in India. Let's make the most of day three as we conclude this virtual edition. Thank you for your enthusiastic participation, and let's make day three grand. Without further delay, I would like to invite Avinash Joyce, who will guide us through today's sessions. Avinash is a founder and CEO at Swasth and Tantragyan, product realization companies in health and ESTM. He has spent 22 years building technology based startups, initially as core member and business group manager for 15 years at Mistral Solutions, and now as business leader at Swasth and Tantragyan since last 7 years. He is passionate about building the product development ecosystem in India to fulfill local needs and for export. His interests include creative technology leverage, entrepreneurship, business strategy, and team building. Over to you, Avinash.
Thanks, Nihal, and hello everyone. Good to be here. Thanks, Nasscom. As we discuss deep tech, it is important to recognize that India has been at the forefront of exceptional learning, discovery, invention, innovation, development, and trade for many centuries, barring a few patches. I'm happy to live in a time that is likely to witness an upheaval towards the past glory with a sense of hope and self belief unlike anything before for some time now. The previous two fantastic days have discussed about research, academia, product development, and deployment. Today we discuss ecosystem and empowerment. Basically, the crucible and the treatment of deep tech. How is it that we can build a culture that creates problem solving? What is it that is required to institutionalize it? How to channelize the immense creativity in the system towards sustainable solution? For the keynote, let me welcome Sri Chintan Vaishnav, Mission Director at Atal Innovation Mission and Chair, Startup 20 Engagement Group under G20 India Presidency. Chintan's interests include creating socio-technical solutions for improving human conditions, especially those resulting due to gross socio-economic inequities. His exposure is the right mix of innovation, strategy, regulatory policy, and engineering for the emerging communities. You will be happy to know that Chintan is kind of a reverse brain drain. He is on leave from MIT for a stint at India. We need more of this, sir. Welcome, Chintan.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can
We
hear
can hear
you.
you. Okay, excellent. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see if that works. Let's see, window or screen. Now, let's see here. Um, let's see. Am I coming through already?
We can
We
hear
can hear
you. We
you. We
can't see
can't
the
see the
screen.
screen. You can't see the screen. Okay, let me see one more time. I will try to see if I can. Okay, is that coming through?
Absolutely,
Absolutely,
yes.
yes. Okay, super. How much time do I have? Just so I clock myself right.
I
I
think
think
we will
we
set
will
out a
set out a
timer.
timer.
It should
It
be
should be
around
around
12 to
12 to
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay, fine, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nasscom, and friends out there. Greetings to everybody in the audience. It's a great honor to speak to you all. I know Nasscom, very action oriented, is doing wonderful work in unpacking the this area called the deep tech. I am. Let me bring you a perspective from. The Atal Innovation Mission, which, as you know, is an umbrella body for nurturing and taking forward the innovation ecosystem of our nation. We sit inside the Niti Aayog, which is the planning body. As was mentioned, I was also chairing the Startup 20 engagement group of the G20 this year. As you know, we were very fortunate that all the leaders agreed to make this a permanent feature of the G20 as we go forward. Uh, Today's conversation is about deep tech. And I realize that this is placed in the session called ecosystem and empowerment. So let me first speak to the idea of ecosystem. As to how we are thinking about it at the Atal Innovation Mission. Um, ecosystem, as you know, is a word that gets thrown around in many different contexts. and oftentimes is not really defined very precisely. And when I go talk about ecosystems in, say, in schools of villages, for example, I often have this challenge of all these children I'm talking to, and I'm trying to describe to them the ecosystem, right? So generally, I am the metaphor that I've found useful is I will always ask them that, if any of you wanted to be an actor, what would you like? What is the first thing you would do? Most of them often would say, I'll go to Bombay, I'll go to Mumbai, right? And I'd say, why would you go to Mumbai? So then they start giving me all these things about, oh, there are writers there, and there are other actors, there are producers, and there are directors. And I said, yeah, that's exactly right. That's the ecosystem, right? So for the innovation ecosystem, the way we are thinking about it at the Atal Innovation Mission uh, is to uh, is to say that uh, uh, i- an ecosystem is a working ecosystem when all the actors that need to be there for that ecosystem to be complete are there, are stable, and their interdependencies of these actors is dependable, right? Their interdependencies are dependable. When we get to that point, that's when somebody nails an idea, the ecosystem scales it, right? So if you nail a search algorithm, ecosystem turns you into Google. If you nail a social network algorithm, the ecosystem scales you into a Facebook, or what have you. So those are the ecosystems we're trying to build. There's another word I was asked to talk about: accelerating the deep tech product growth. Um, I tend to think that uh, there's quite a spectrum when one thinks about the deep tech, and the way we have come to think about the sort of the highest end of that deep tech spectrum, where we will have to get to over time, is um, a deep tech is one, um, at that purest end of the spectrum. A deep tech is one where the process of creating a startup itself leads to creation of new knowledge. The process of creating a startup itself leads to creation of new knowledge. So for instance, Moderna, which created the vaccine, is a deep tech, uh, and it, it created new knowledge of how vaccines of mRNA type of vaccines can be created, combining various hypotheses and so on. Now, that's the sort of the holy grail. When we come back and we start thinking about deep tech, where there's a great deal of technological complexity, there's a great deal of often scientific uncertainty, there's a great deal of interdisciplinary complexity. Those are the places where deep tech originates. And I think what we have come to presently accept as deep tech, maybe more diluted than that picture that I'm presenting, but that's where we are headed, is the way we think about it. What I want to do with you over the next few minutes is, I want to show you some pictures. Look, I want to get into this conversation by accepting that we have a long road ahead when it comes to deep tech, right? But we are on our way. That is also for sure. So the question is, where do we stand? How do we measure it? What next we need to do? So let me first show you some pictures of where the ecosystem stands, right? So here's the startups picture. So about 100,000 startups in this picture, 99,693. It was drawn about a week ago, this picture. Um, and about 110 unicorns, where I put 108 plus because the valuation goes up and down and the number keeps going. a little bit plus and minus, uh, and the third largest ecosystem. Right in this picture, the darker, the more number of startups, and you see that uh, some of it is possibly not a surprise, but when I show this picture to people, they say that perhaps Uttar Pradesh is a surprise. Look at how dark it is. Right, so about 10,000 plus startups. That's the startup picture today. I tend to say that we are about one tenth of the way. By in about 10 years plus, we will have 1 million startups. So that's where we stand. We could talk about that number if you have questions about it. Uh, uh, now, what is leading to this? Right, we may be the only country where there's the largest movement of doing something, sensitizing school children with the idea of innovation and entrepreneurship. So if you look at the Atal Tinkering Labs picture, this is what it looks like. You can see that you can pretty much see what India looks like with this picture, right? 10,000 labs, maker spaces in schools, 10, 6 to 12th grade, about 8 million students sensitized, about 1 million plus um, projects already done, and so on. So this is kind of is what is creating the pipeline. Uh, the depth of this pipeline, I have to share with you that uh, this is still a lot of modular level uh, innovation work. Okay, this is not very deeper innovation work. So for instance, if you got hold of an Atal Tinkering Lab student, most of the students would build you a prototype of something if you gave them the modules. But if you told them, can you build a PCB from scratch, they will say no. So we have to deepen this ecosystem if we want to do more deep tech, right? Let me show you the incubator picture. This is the incubator accelerator picture. If you look at Startup India's web page, there are more than 1,000 today, but I've said more than 900 because there's some duplication. There's also some exuberance. So people have registered an incubator, but activity is not yet there. So, but 900 plus, we can say they are there. What is interesting is that they're both public and private. So about 500 or so are public, with government supported. Rest of them are private, and the real indicator of how this ecosystem is moving forward is that a lot of the early ones were sector agnostic. But now there are more sector specific sectoral incubators, including recently in the Department of Atomic Energy, there was a sort of the photonic research based incubator that's just getting launched. That is deep tech, right? It will be deep tech. So I think we are moving in that direction. All the sector specific things are closer in some ways to deep tech also. Um, if you look at how, of course, fueling all this is the number of higher educational institutions. I want to stay with this map. Patents filed. You see which states. If you look at 2014 to 22, this is what the number of patents filed looks like. Okay. Again, you see that a lot more in the south, and as compared to the rest of the country, and so on. So uh, just a few maps about where the nation stands. Now, let me. You also know that our ecosystem stands on the shoulders of many giants. So at the central level, you have NSTEDB in the DST, which started in the 80s, building incubators, BIRAC in the 90s, MADI Startup Hub, the IT digital sector activities in the late 90s, 2000s. That's also closer to Nasscom, Atal Innovation Mission and Startup India in 2016. IDEX, which is defense centric more recently, that came out of Atal Innovation Mission. And then there's a whole bunch of state level work going on. I'm not capturing all of it, just a few examples and so on. But this is where this is what the ecosystem stands on. Now let's get into so what needs to be done, right? In terms of the deep tech, the one thing that I don't know if you appreciate, but only about 0.6% of India's startups are hardware startups. In other words, our deep tech conversation is also still limited a lot to software and digital. Obviously, the universal set of deep tech is beyond just software and digital, right? So, at Atal Innovation Mission, that's the space we have to play in because the market is not fully playing in it. So and the way we have to do it is to make our runway longer, right? So today you do see up to, grants, the sort of angel, series A, that type of money is easier in India. Series B, C, D, E, all of that much harder. That I think that we have to change. Second, uh, 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 translation from our lab. If you go to our CSIR labs, some amazing translatable science, but not really coming out into deep tech. We have to change that, right? Uh, in fact, 2 years ago, we ran an experiment called AIM Prime about a year and a half ago, where we took uh, science based potential startups at TRL 3 or 4 and really intensely handheld them through a program of 9 months to have them jump about a 1.5 to 2 TRLs, have them raise capital, have them file IPs, and so on. We realized that for science and hardware based startups, deep techs, it'll need a lot of intense handholding and money. That's the next step for our Atal Innovation Mission, something we have proposed that we will do. Um, the other thing, which I think is happening much better in digital and software land, which is not happening in hardware land, or is happening much less in hardware land, is the industry startup osmosis, right? So ideas, they're like two soda water glasses standing next to each other. In either industry or the software land, you can come up with an idea, you can become big, but there's no osmosis between them. We have to change that. So that's the next set of programs we at Atal Innovation Mission are proposing. Uh, so in big picture, those are two things: make the runway longer, increase the osmosis, are the two directions that we will be working on. Now, let me now finally end with a few more pictures. These are recent pictures. Nobody else other than you have seen them. So I am really being a little risky in showing you these pictures, but I'm excited about it. So I'll share it with you. And I will end in a couple of minutes, okay? So think about putting number of patents filed on one axis, on x-axis, and number of startups on y-axis per state. This is what the picture looks like. Now look at uh, Tamil Nadu, right? Tamil Nadu, lot more patents, fewer startups compared to it. What does that mean? That means lot more knowledge creation, but fewer knowledge-based startups, right? Look at Maharashtra. It's more on the sort of the diagonal. So anybody below the diagonal is more knowledge, less startups. Anybody above the diagonal, more startups, possibly. There's nobody in the top left corner. Otherwise, one would say these are startups, but not IP based startups, right? Now you see a whole cluster closer to the zero, where zero cross is there. Let me zoom into that. So if you have if I look at startups that are if I look at startups uh, anywhere between 100 and above, then about 2000, sorry, on x-axis, and sorry, let me stop, pause for a moment. number of patents about 2000 per state on x-axis, number of registered startups on y-axis. This is what the figure looks like. Right here, again, here you see that there's a lot more correlation. So possibly again, many states, their IP is correlated with number of startups, right? That may be expected. um, if you go to between 100 and 2000 number, because there are many small states or smaller activities, on x-axis patents, on y-axis startups, you see Madhya Pradesh in that bracket, again on the diagonal. You see Jammu and Kashmir and Bihar, that's on the top left ish corner, which means these are less IP based startups. They may be me too startups. And so from the deep tech perspective, we are clearly more interested in the uh, on the bottom right side, right? Uttarakhand, for instance, more IP, even the number of startups are less, but there's more chance of a sort of a knowledge based startup there. Now, if I go to 0 to 100, again, they're also even smaller, a lot of the northeast places. There you see Tripura has a number of patents, but fewer startups, and so on. So again, the point is that I think we will, for deep tech, we will have to zero in on eh, intellectually intellectual property focused places, and take them forward into this journey of startups that have higher degree of uncertainty, they have longer gestation time, they need more money, so that we can bring them out. That's the kind of program we're hoping to build next. Let me end by sharing a couple of thoughts. First, um, G20 delivered something very important for startups. If you read the 18th paragraph of the New Delhi Leaders Declaration, it said, "We recognize that startups and MSMEs are natural engines of growth. They are key to socioeconomic transformation by driving innovation and creating employment. We welcome the establishment of the Startup 20 Engagement Group during India's G20 presidency and its continuation." So now startups have a platform to ask world leaders what it is that they want and what is it that they should ask for. Uh, Startup 20 said that we want to raise the annual investment in global startup ecosystem to $1 trillion annually, which is about 2.5 to 3 times what it is today. And that is the first thing we should ask for, because just take this anecdote. If you look at the top 40 startups, deep tech startups of the world, and say, ask what is the average investment in each deep tech startup, that number is 75 million US dollars per deep tech startup, the top 40. That number, $75 million, is larger than Atal Innovation Mission's annual budget. That's deep. That's the deep tech we're trying to build. Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely
Absolutely
fascinating,
fascinating.
I
Chintan.
will stop
And
sharing.
you
And
know,
you
the
know, the
knowledge
knowledge
based,
based,
IP based
IP-based
startups,
startups,
that's a
that's a
fundamental
fundamental
shift.
shift.
And,
And
and we believe culture eats strategy before breakfast. So uh, it's critical we build a culture that will take us longer than anything else. For the next note on rethinking research funding models for deep tech science advancements, we welcome Dr. Sudhir Kamath. He was Director of Microwave Tube Research and Development Center at DRDO, presently leads DRDO Industry Academia Raman Center of Excellence at the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru, focusing on boosting and sustaining development of advanced technologies for future defense systems and platforms through multidisciplinary and multi-institutional collaboration efforts. Will this be the next DARPA? So let's welcome Dr. Sudhir Kamath. Thank
Yeah,
you so
thank
much.
you. Am I audible?
You are.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't have any presentation because I thought I will be sharing my experience so far. So to start with, I thank Nasscom for giving me this opportunity, and also thank the earlier speaker, Dr. Vasist. I think, sorry, I'm not getting the name, the earlier speaker, who is actually gave a real in-depth picture of the startup ecosystem and Atal innovation centers which has been initiated, and thought-provoking graphs which he has really given. But in my talk, I'm trying to give a different dimension. As you all know, that government initiative and then present focus is to give how to make this nation a developed nation by 2047. And you know that to make India as a developed nation by that time, it is important that apart from food and healthcare, the technology needs to be nurtured. And as long as we are technology dependent, we cannot call ourselves as a developed nation or maybe a strong nation. Now, India, the big picture, if you see, what I have seen from DRDO's point of view, or maybe a strategic system development point of view, or even at the commercial systems, you know that most of the industry, they are developing the big systems, maybe subsystems. But when it comes to the basic component level development or materials, we are very, very far behind. And this we have seen by our experience that any defense equipments when we are buying or when you're 50%, 60%, but it is not good enough. That's what I can say. Now, why it is happening? See, when you talk about deep tech, now material development and component development is actually a deep tech. Of course, as it was brought out by earlier speaker, Dr. Vasist, that the Atal Innovation Center in the schools or maybe in the colleges, when you say, I mean, he rightly said that the startups or ecosystem or the incubators which has been used, the simpler thing to do is maybe IT based or maybe digital based system or maybe subsystem development. But when you talk about real science, which actually supports the deep tech, where are we? I think on this platform, I'd also like to share a thought that if you talk about, we have huge number of private and government driven colleges, but where are we leading to? We are mostly focusing on technology driven colleges, but are we really supporting science driven colleges? And without that, how do you support the HR requirement or maybe thought process for even making a deep tech successful? I think this is apart from, okay, what you have said, the funding part, but I think this is one of the things which I thought it should be given thought about. How do you really support? I mean, just give an example. We have number of engineering colleges, maybe a lot of engineers are coming up, and ultimately all of them or most of them land up in IT sector or maybe land up in a digital driven system. Where is the manufacturing going? Because manufacturing is the area where actually we need a deep tech background. Without that, we cannot make our manufacturing world class. So this has to be thought about, and some action point need to be brought by the policymakers to support the BSc or MSc, the science-driven degrees, where we should get some extra incentive or encouragement for the people to start entering into that area. Otherwise, what I saw during last 1 decade or maybe a couple of decades, the influx of the students in that direction is actually declining, and it is almost coming to zero. And I think that is not a good sign. Now, coming back to the deep tech, I think deep tech generally is driven by deep science, and deep science requires basic processes and also the raw materials development. Now, you know, if many of the people or speakers who are available here, if they are involved in strategic area or if they are involved in basic science development activity, we depend most of the time for even the basic high-end materials requirement for import, and we do not have any policy or any guidelines in place how to develop even basic raw materials or chemicals are not available. Now coming to the dependency on the, because the dependency on the process is there, we also depend, like recent times, I think you have been hearing government is pushing hard for the component level development by having foundries. And we also have the similar problem there. No industries coming forward wholeheartedly to really develop the component, which can be made independent or indigenously, and which also helps in India making secured systems. Now, why it is happening? Because the process equipments are not indigenously available. We have to depend on import of process equipment. You have to depend on imported raw materials. You have to depend on import of chemicals. All that dependency, unless it is minimized, I will not say removed, because even the developed countries also has dependency, but how much we are dependent is what we have to take it into account. Now, I'll give an example of China. Unfortunately, I think you're our own neighbor. If you look back, during 90s, late 90s, Chinese, which we can see very clearly, lot of publications started, maybe good, maybe bad. They were not good at English, but they have started publishing. Lot of basic science, deep tech science activity, it appears would have started at that time. And of course, they got support from maybe like USSR when it disintegrated, and a lot of input they got. And of course, India also got some of the information from there. But this deep tech science is supported in that country for last 3 decades. And the result of that continuous long-term support has been giving result today. You can see recent times, lot of development, even beyond what the developed countries have been talking about, and nobody knows how much they have developed and how far they are, because there are other limitations. Now, countries like this, if you see that even the developed countries, that material development dependency, it is not that if you take the periodic table out of 90 elements, you may not be having all the elements in the country, but can we say that some of the raw materials, which is more critical to our requirement, whether we are not depending outside, and how do you develop those things? And that is where I think the startup ecosystem and the funding has to be given. And that is what very nicely said earlier speaker also, that when you see the statistics, most of the startups, if you see that IPs are available, but startups are not in that direction, maybe because many IPs, how much returns they are giving, which you are not really looking at. And that is where I think we may have to focus upon, and we need to have the concept as to how to support a long-term sustainability model. Now, just giving briefly for a few minutes, I can just talk about the initiative with DRDO has also taken, where this is the one of the center where to support such long-term activity, the DRDO Industry Academia centers have been opened. 15 centers are there in various leading education institutes, not only IITs and ISC, but also some of the other universities also, where DRDO is trying to fund the TRL level, maybe 2 and up to 5 or 6 through these centers. Of course, there are some other mechanisms available where basic research, where extramural research activity can be supported, where TRL level 1 to 2 can be done. And also there is a mechanism available where TRL level beyond 6 or 7, which can be productized, that facilities there. But through this center, the main purpose is to go deep tech and support. I mean, we actually collaborate with academia, also industry and startup, or maybe MSMEs through these centers, which get involved during the development activity, and also which is relevant to strategic sectors. So that is the initiative which has been taken, and enough funding is available through the center. So through this platform, I'd like to also bring to the notice of industry that they should, in case they have any such requirement, they can interact through this center, and also take support of academia, and we can develop whichever is relevant to the study sector or defense sector for India. Now, coming to government funding, you know that deep tech, or maybe for the long-term strategic funding requirement is we need to have fund. Right now, the mechanism which is available is traditionally it is from the government sector, but again, there is a limitation. So if you say if government funding is given, it is limited for maybe 3 years or 5 year duration. There is no model right now available in government sector, most of the department, where you can say for 15 to 20 years I will support if there is any activity. So now if that is the case, then the agency, I mean, there is no policy in place, first of all. And also, if I say about it, GFR policy also does not say, because if you say deep tech, the fail rate, sorry, I think my time is up, but I may take few more minutes. If you say the GFR policy itself, we do not have a policy in place where there is a acceptance of failure when you do DeepTech, because as you know, even I think initially DARPA model has been stated, if you go to the statistic, maybe 5 to 10% projects are really successful. 85, 90% plus is actually a failure. May not be a failure, but it gives knowledge generation. But then that type of funding, maybe it is terminated in between, maybe it is tried for longer duration, but then there is no policy in place that such money, if it is goes down the drain, if I can call it so, what is the mechanism? Because people who are taking the funding is becoming answerable. Similarly, other department, maybe DST and maybe MIT. Now, I understand recent times their policies change. Now, I think they are asking, can you take, I mean, as I hear from the academics now, they are prepared to give the funding. But then the question is, they are saying that you should do a research where industry supports it. Yes, fine. That's a good idea, because then whatever you do, it may get translated to a product. But then when you involve industry, I mean, the driven by industry, industry is driven by their economics. So industry will ask you to develop something which may or may not be deep tech, because as I believe or feel that even Indian industry, even the top industries are not still geared up, are not having that mental makeup to support any deep tech activity which may yield result maybe 10 years down the line. That type of vision need to be there. Even I think another example, CSR funding, which we are talking about, most of them are spent on general purpose things, maybe making infrastructure development, road making, social requirement. Good, it should be done. But then science is also developed for the societal purposes. So can this type of funding partially can be supported for the deep tech activity? This is again policy change requirement, which should be compulsion for the industry to give such funding. Now, I think, any deep tech funding requires a very large scale and long-term sustainability model, which is right now not in place. And also it needs a more agile and risk tolerance policies and approaches, which is not there. So what I feel now, I think to conclude, the innovative model which we can think of, some of the things which I thought, or maybe as I already said, maybe some changes in the government policy on GFR. Of course, there are some modifications happening, but there may be more where the failure should not be dumped upon the PIs or maybe the researcher that, yes, you are not given anything, so much of money has been gone down the drain. It's not, because even if it's failed, that gives a lot of knowledge, and that should be acknowledged when you are talking about futuristic long-term, where you want to really do world-class research. We need to accept some of the failures, and failures give a lot of knowledge. So I think few example like public-private partnership may be one of the things. Right now it is only a public or maybe government support. Private partner also, as I said, the industry should also come up with some model where they can support this activity collaboratively. Maybe that because the investment required for the deep tech is lot of process equipment required, which is very costly. Maybe that funding can come from government, but then sustaining it by maintaining it, by operationalizing it, whether industry can come forward so that this activity can be taken in the long-term process. And similarly, such facilities should be available for all the researchers. Right now, unfortunately, the funding is being done, but it is lying in pockets. And if you say, maybe some just examples I'm giving it, not that it is happening, like high-end research, institutes like IITs, if they have some facility, are that facility being available to large extent to the lower end colleges or students or a professor if they want to do research? There are some models which is being worked out. I think we need to work more on that. Venture philanthropist is one of the example. Maybe that is the one where it is a more philosophical thing, where some philanthropists can come and say, okay, I'm giving some money, do something on this. Similarly, crowdsourcing and citizen science, I think it is that is also one of the possibility which has been talked about, but whether Indian society is mature to that, need to be worked on. And long-term research funding, which I think all the departments and all the industry, as I said, through their approaches, whichever way, we have to collaborate to think about and bring out a policy which can be supported, and then only we can do a long-term research. With this, I would thank again Nasscom for giving me an opportunity to speak and share my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Sudhir. It was a wonderful talk, and your insight on subsystems being built from India is critical. Supply technology to defense, I can understand your point on that, and Also, the focus on basic sciences and patient capital. IDEX is a good initiative from DRDO. We're very happy about it. I think we should do more. Thanks for your time. It was a wonderful talk. We learned a lot. Thank you, sir. Moving forward, now we discuss funding deep tech from a venture capital's perspective on research-based startups. To discuss this, we have an elite panel comprising Girish Shivani, Executive Director and Fund Manager at Ionest Venture Capital, Abhishek Srivastava, Director at India Partners, and Rema Subramanian, co-founder and managing director of Capital. We've heard investing what is and let's understand what, why, and how investment.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nasscom, for the invite and privilege to be here. I think before I kind of bring in my co-panelist, very quick roundup. Like it was mentioned, the session is to explore the dynamic landscape of the overall deep tech and deep science, industry. I think what we all have been witnessing, of course, almost now we stand at the cusp of having 3,000 to 4,000 startups growing at a pace of almost 50% plus CAGR, year on year, when I talk about the deep tech strength. And as a country, as we continue to make, take significant sort of strides, the most recent one being Chandrayaan-3, I think, no matter how much we talk about it, the less it is with the capital efficiency that they've been able to do. I think the idea of this session was to kind of delve into the nuances, both from a challenges and opportunities perspective. Of course, we have all the VCs, so there's a little bit of a bias towards the VC lens. So with that, I'll welcome Rima from Ankur Capital and Girish from Ionest. Rima, Girish, before I dwell deeper, may I request, like, if you can just take 30 to 45 seconds to quickly introduce your fund, that will be helpful. Rima, you want to go first?
So we are Ankur Capital is an early stage deep science and technology fund. We have listed 30 companies across the 2 months. We have been investing in one of the category creating areas such as tech, agri-tech, which has been
You're a little bit, I don't know if it's for me, Rima, but you're breaking.
Yeah, Rima, you're breaking up a lot.
Is it?
Yeah, Rima, you're breaking up a lot.
Okay. Can the others start while I just switch to another provider? Sorry.
Sure, I will. Sure.
I think Girish, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone, and hi Abhishek, hi Rema. Glad to be here. So I represent Ionest. We are a deep tech focused fund based out of NCR. We've been around for 12 years now. We are now deploying from the third fund. For us, deep tech has 2 legs to it. One is this entire hardware leg around sensors, wearables, robotics, industrial IoT, semiconductors, and the likes. And on the software side, it's all about cutting edge technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, distributed ledger technologies, immersive technologies, and enterprise SaaS. So that's what we do. We are currently deploying from a third fund. We have a portfolio of about 27, 28 active companies. 24 of them would be considered as deep tech, with respect to the definition. And we've been doing this for the last 12 years now.
Wonderful. Maybe I'll quickly chime in and I'll give some more, breathing space to Rima while she reselects her connection. So we are India Partners. I represent India Partners. We are an early stage fund, again, fairly similar to Ionest, as you would have heard from Girish. We come in at seed, pre-A, focus being around technology and healthcare. I would not say we are solely focused on deep tech and deep science, but deep tech and deep science form a very, very formidable section of our overall investments. I think we are currently operating out of our fund 2, made close to 25 plus odd investments, and very excited about where the whole deep tech kind of is evolving. Yeah. Rima, back to you. If are you back? Can you help us just with a quick introduction?
Rima, you're on mute, I think.
I think you're on mute. Yeah, you're on mute.
You're on mute. No, can't hear her.
Yeah, can't hear you, Rima.
You might want to log off and log back in, Rima.
Yeah, I think do that in the interest of time. I probably jump on while once she comes back. I think we'll probably give her some space for a quick intro.
We'll probably give some space for
Girish, let me then jump directly to the topic, right? I think if you look at of course, the deep tech investment has always been a fairly gray ocean to a lot of entrepreneurs out over there, right? And one of the core things that anybody or core curiosity that any entrepreneur has is what are the specific criteria that investor looks into, right? What's the investor lens while evaluating some of these deep tech startups? And let me try and probably also a little bit break this question down, right? So that it makes sense. So one is, while you guys are evaluating any new investment, what do you and how do you evaluate? That's one. Two is, are there certain different or nuances when you're looking at the deep tech companies and the startups? And third is, when they kind of graduate and evolve and look for upstream capital, what your experience has been? How do the next upstream investors evaluate them? Because it takes a bit longer for the companies to reach to a certain critical mass from a revenue standpoint, customer standpoint, right? So yeah, if you can just maybe.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of stuff that we see typically, for us, deep tech would essentially mean some kind of IP. You know, without IP, it does not really make sense. So within the portfolio, for example, we have about 70 plus patents that have already been filed and granted. Another 20 would be filed this year. So for us, the technology moat is extremely important. Along with that, what we are looking for is, what is the founder skill set, what is his experience in the domain that they're working in, and are they bringing in complementary skill sets? If one is a technology guy, is the other guy, does he have commercial acumen, etc. Because typically at the stage at which we come in, like you as well, Abhishek, there is hardly any revenue, hardly any revenue model validation. Sometimes there is product market fit, sometimes there is not. So it is more about the people that you back and the kind of skill sets that they bring to the table, at the stage at which we come in. uh, and we are happy to put in a million and a half, maybe 2 million also, to kind of get it to a stage where some of those metrics that an upstream investor, typical series A investor would look at, can kind of get fulfilled. So the way we look at it is, how much money are you looking to raise for the next 18 to 24 months, and where will this get you with respect to both revenue model validation and product market fit? Because beyond our stage, which is the seed stage or a pre-series A stage, the next guy is actually looking at traction. When it's a series B, series A, series B, etc. Even if it is not revenue traction, they are at least looking at customer traction. They are looking at, for example, if it's a cybersecurity company, they are not saying what revenue you have, but they're saying how many endpoints are you deployed in, for example. And that's where, some of how efficiently are you able to manage your funnel? Has the funnel velocity kind of improved over the last couple of quarters, etc. So those are the kind of things that. There is suddenly an echo. Rema, you will probably have to go on mute. Yeah. So those are the kind of things that next series of investors would start to ask for when they are writing a $3-5 million check. The other thing that we've done differently is also, for example, because we come in at a stage where some of these guys are TRL4, TRL5, etc. On the when we're talking about the hardware end of it, we've tried to keep $2.50 to every dollar we put in the first round, as dry powder, so that we can continue to support these companies as they scale up, as they go to next levels of technology evolution, product market fit, etc. And we are happy to work with co-investors. Out of the 27 companies we've done, 25 would be co-investments, 17, 18 we would have led, 7, 8 we would have participated with somebody else like yourselves. And the intent is to get like-minded people on board from day one, so that when deeper pools of capital are required, then in most cases we can internally wrestle up till they get to a stage where they are externally fundable. So that's how we've tried to kind of mitigate some of these challenges we've seen on the deep tech side.
Wonderful. No, thanks, Girish. I've kind of noted few things and we'll bring it up later. Rima, since you're back, I'll jump right away. Everybody knows you. You need no intro. So I'll jump right away into the topic. The, folks, if you can mute yourself at the backstage. Yeah. So the question that I have, entrepreneurs are always very curious to learn how do deep tech, deep science investors actually evaluate their company. And I had kind of broken it down in three ways. So one is, what are those things that you folks look at, while evaluating some of those deep science companies? Two is, are there anything extra or different when you're looking at the deep tech and the deep science companies, apart from the regular, the TAMs and so on and so forth? And third is, when they go for the upstream capital, how do you see them being getting evaluated? Because a lot of times, revenue buildup takes certain amount of time. There is a gestation to maturity of the product and commercializing it, productization of the same. So these were three things, and I would love to have your inputs.
For more we talk about technology and investments, we still seem to be having struggles. So I hope you guys can hear me this time and it's not breaking up.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. So I'll focus more while we do both deep science and technologies, since I heard a little bit of what Jonas does. In terms, we do have common in terms from a technology, software and hardware technologies. I would focus more on the biotech side because that I think was not covered. So let me focus on that one. So one is kind of investments that when we do in biotech kind of things, whether it's health tech across climate or battery technologies and stuff around that. We would break this down not just based on one is of course obviously the TAM part of it, this case, but the other things that you will need to look at is one, what's happening globally, especially around IP based companies. It is not just what's happening in India, but what's happening globally. And it's not just in terms of the same technology that we are talking about, but are there other parts and other related things that's happening globally in the same space becomes very, very relevant. Because one has to also take a call on whether which technology might prevail in the long run. So some of those evaluations as to whether you might be the best in what you do, but you might just be sideswept by something that's happening new. So it becomes very, very important to look at what's happening globally in terms of the technologies that are being used to solve the same problem case. That's case. And in many cases, the fact that cost by itself is not the most driving factor in many of these globally. So to say that we would do it cheaper here in India is not really the solution. So you need to be looking at the fact that how can you create a global scale company with the best technology, and to say that it's not about being cheaper, second best in India or the third best globally would not work. So it becomes very important from that perspective to look at what's valuable, because you could just get swept by both in India and outside India. So that's one thing. Second thing is the fact that it takes much, much longer, no doubt. So revenue may not always be the criteria for us to use. So we always look at it from a milestone perspective. Milestones is what we look at from what is a milestone that you need to reach, and who are the investors who can come in at that milestone. So it becomes important for us to look at the next stage of investors from a company perspective is what is the money that's required to reach the next milestone rather than the revenue target, and what would be the next stage of investors looking for. The third thing that we look for is the fact that are there beyond one use case, what is the other use cases that you would look at? Because in the case of science-led areas, when you are investing into something and developing a particular solution, it's possible that that particular solution might can be addressed from different ways, and your solution may not be the best one. So is there more platform solutions? Are there other use cases that you can come up with? That also becomes an important, multiple use cases becomes one of the critical things that we look at while we make while we are evaluating that. The next thing that we would look at more from is the fact that the um, the investor base, also especially in some of the areas that we have invested in, is not just Indian investors but global investors. So we have to look at who are the global investors, especially around the biotech cases and all that we have invested in. We've actually got a lot more interest from global investors. And so what is it that they are looking for and what are they investing into becomes even more important. So we look at more the global landscape of those investors at scale. And whether the entrepreneurs are appreciating that, that's the other thing that, the fact that there's going to be global investors and hence what are their global ambitions becomes very, very critical. Those I would say is a fact, top things that we would look for when we are looking at the spaces that we invest in addition to what Sunil was mentioning earlier in this, because those are, those are ones we look for. This is more from a biotech space.
Wonderful. No, I completely agree with you both. I think few key elements, which anyways, I think Girish and both you, Rima, brought out, even in our case, like customer validation, especially, how to justify the upstream. There has been a progress. I think very interesting element you bring out is how do you break it into few mini nuggets of milestones rather than just being fixated on the revenue, which all of us know, takes time, right? In kind of a deep tech startup. And absolutely, I think for us, one of the things that seem to have worked is if we can identify a global partner early on, that's better, right? From an investor standpoint, because a lot of these are it's not just about the capital; they also need that market access, and sometimes it just becomes a little bit easier. One of the interesting things that we are also seeing, though I don't think I can still generalize it, but it seems some spaces don't mind having strategic investors, early on. And by that, what I mean is that financial investors don't see that as a hindrance, or they don't seem to have that stigma, especially when you're doing with global peers and so on and so forth. But completely, valid. I think that kind of takes me to the next question. And as VCs, of course, we we see few wins, we see few losses, and then a lot of sort of middle performing companies. I think if I have to ask you both, and Rima, maybe, or maybe Girish, you can start. Like one successful company that you guys have had in your portfolio, and more importantly, what successful. Of course, apart from the product and the problem that they're solving, are there certain traits that one can pick up in their journeys, as a best practices?
Sure. So let me talk about a company called Exponent Energy here. They are basically they have created a very interesting battery pack and battery charging infrastructure, which is able to use the standard lithium-ion battery and pump it to 100% charge within less than 30 minutes. And so when we came in, they were still at a prototype stage, and they were able to demonstrate this in a lab level. But today they are already commercialized. They've already raised multiple rounds of capital. They already have exclusive tie-ups with three-wheeler manufacturers, and their use case was very, very sharply defined in terms of they were going after three-wheeler last mile intracity logistics. And with that sharp definition of the use case, today they have pretty much every large three-wheeler manufacturer who has an electric version is their client, because this is a commercial asset, right? And the driver wants to milk the asset 12 14 hours a day, rather than leave the vehicle charged on the on the bay side for 6 hours 8 hours for the battery to get fully charged. Today he can start at 8 in the morning, do his 6 hour of 150 kilometers, go to a docking station, while his rickshaw is being loaded. He has his lunch, and in 30 minutes the battery is fully charged and is good for another 6 hours. So it's not only the largeness of the opportunity here, but it's also the identification of the problem to solve for. The same problem can, for example, be today leveraged in any commercial asset, whether it's an intercity bus or it's an intercity large truck logistics, etc., etc. I think to get to that first level of customer validation, where you have people who are paying you for the kind of product that you've built out and taken to the market, that gives a completely different flavor to the opportunity. And this investment has been less than 2 years for us. So, and they are today, they're raising money at the 30x multiple of what we came in the first round, which is in less than 24 months. you know s- Success is not valuation here. Success is the identification of a very sharp niche where their product is where there is an applicability of what the technology that they've built out, and then use that as a leaping board into taking this to other segments of the market. So that, to my mind, is a great example of how some of the how we've seen some of our companies evolve within the portfolio.
Wonderful. Thanks, Girish. Rima, your 2 cents, please.
Sure. So I have a great company that Girish spoke about. I would want to talk about a company called String Bio that we invested in. This is a synthetic biology platform that we invested in when they were just in a pilot phase that we had invested in about 3 years back. And what we saw at that point of time is that globally there has been one other large player who has done this, right? And so the question was that one was that. Second was that there was a whole lot of other synthetic biology players were also getting into the market. One was we had to look at as a fact, what was this company different? How was this company different from that other technology that was out there? And for us, the key thing that was differentiated was one, of course, the fact that they were being developed in India, so it was a fraction of the cost of what it would take to develop in the US and Europe as well. The other part of it is the fact that the solution that came out of the developed market was something where you needed large plants of $100 million plus to set the plant up. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention about the fact synthetic biology as a platform. What they do is that they convert GHGs into proteins, which can then go into different use cases. So one was the fact that they could set up actually in a very decentralized manner, where you could set up a plant at a fraction of a cost, but for a couple of $1 million, you would be able to set up a plant. What then actually it happened was the fact that it opened up a large market. Then your source could be, you could move the solution to the source of the feed versus the fact having to move the feed to the solution, to the plant, which was a big breakthrough. That was one. The second thing that we looked for was the fact that would they have multiple use cases that they could come up with, and was this team something that could actually look at creating those multiples? And the team to us was the fact was what made a huge difference, because they were fixated not on the fact that we could convert this, but how could you value add and create the value added solutions. And so they were able to come up with solutions, whether it was for animal feed, or whether it was biostimulants, or food for human beings, or synthetic biology, specialty chemicals that we could do. So they were more looking at how do we value add and create value for this company, value added products that they could come up with. So that was one thing. And the second thing that team focused on was on the fact that one is the fact at the end of the day, you might have a climate solution, which is really the best in the world. But at the same time, you have to be able to compete on product, on what are the alternate things that's available. And so to focus on that, the getting the unit economics right so that you can actually get to that scale globally was what they focused on, right? And so they had that whole techno-commercial capabilities, which is very critical in science-led companies, because
Wonderful.
you have scientists who are very good at the science of what they do, but to get those commercial capabilities is a gap that we see, and why we don't see many of those scientific achievements actually come to market, right? And this company actually has been able to do that as well. While we invested in them 3 years back when they were in the lab in Bangalore, today they are setting up a large plant in Australia with one of the largest oil majors in Australia called Woodside Energy. And they're setting up their own plant outside Bangalore. And they have various pilots happening with the L'Oreals of the world and the large agri chemicals around the world as well. So it's been a huge journey for us, and the valuation jump may have been like 20x plus, and not just because of the fact that the milestones changed. So from the fact that they could do a pilot of 100 liters to 1,000 liters to now setting up a large plant, that's the progression that we have seen that they've been able to take and bring the products to the market. So I think just being milestone driven, looking at the large use cases, getting the unit economics, the techno commercials in place has been one of the biggest things that's worked for this company and for us.
No, thanks. Thanks, Seema.
No, thanks.
Completely agree and very, very insightful.
Very insightful.
This is a topic which can go on. There's so much to learn, from this whole deep tech and deep science journey. Just very quickly, sort of add to what you and Girish said. I think in our limited experience, what we've also seen that some of the guys who work very closely with the partners, global partners early on, they are able to kind of extract the industry benchmarks, and that becomes very, very critical, because you need something to show that you're building something really disruptive and not incremental, which is the vision and ambition of any deep tech, right? The two is, I think, the nature of India funding has been such that deep tech, poor deep tech entrepreneurs also had to manage themselves within what the quantums are allowed for, let's say, a SaaS company or a consumer tech company, right? Whereas all of us, we know, a simple tape out would take anywhere between $8 to $10 million if it's been happening in US or somewhere else, right? Which has definitely brought in this very interesting angle of frugal engineering, like you briefly talked about, Rima. Of course, I see Avinash here, so we are running out of time. Like I said, a lot to discuss, but I think just to close it, what I feel excited about, what we feel excited about, is that deep tech has no more remained a buzzword. I think it's become a real, driving force and the engine for this country. And when all of us, when you see people are actually putting money, might, and their own resources and bandwidth to make it happen, I think that speaks volumes. So feel extremely excited about it. Thanks, Rima. Thanks, Girish. Avinash, over to you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks
for the panel. It was a great discussion. In the interest of time, I think we'll move to the next panel. Thanks. So next we hear from Suparna Bhattacharya on data sharing and collaboration in deep tech research. She's a HPE fellow in the AI research lab at Hewlett Packard, where she currently focuses on data-centric, trustworthy AI. With 28 years of experience in system software development and research at HPE and IBM, including several enjoyable years of open source contributions to Linux kernel, she is the best person to speak on how sharing and collaboration can leverage deep tech. In fact, Suparna, I don't think I did justice to your experience in the introduction. Please take over the stage, and we can learn a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Can you see my slides?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. My talk is going to be a little bit different from what we've been hearing, during the afternoon, and a lot of excellent perspectives. So we're talking about the the issue of how can you share data better and use that better for collaborations. And I'm going to present a little bit of a technical perspective on this, how the kind of things that we're trying to do to enable this. The heart of it is really, if you think about why actually we even worry about sharing data or connecting data, is really because you want to solve big problems, whether it is looking at healthcare situations, or whether it is looking at sustainability. In fact, these are the two big things that I heard when I was on a panel at the ODI, on data sharing. And many people started thinking about data sharing around the time of the pandemic, and one of the big reasons why they were looking at that as an area was because of sustainability. But it's also be able to enable us to discover new horizons that will help us solve maybe all of or many of these problems. So what we can see from our collaborations with some of the research labs across the world, and is that there is, of course, a lot of acceleration of scientific progress through data, and actually lot of different sources of data, and you could use each of them individually to solve problems. But if you want to connect the dots, then you kind of look at it that some things might be coming from edge sites like wind farms, some things might be from a lab, some things could be from a particle accelerator, and then there is also data that is being generated by simulators. So there's a huge amount of a variety of data. There's a lot of modalities of data, and with AI, these things are expanding. And if you start from the individual scientists to look at the science communities, so for each of these communities or each of these scientists are probably using these different kinds of data, and so it gets even more complex. The processing of this data, if you want to solve a problem, sometimes part of the things like a simulation happens on the supercomputer. Your some of your is people might be accessing it from the cloud, somebody might be using it on their desktop. The data is coming from from an experimental site. So there is a lot of different challenges, and then there is also a huge amount of data and variety. So the question, I guess, is whenever somebody wants to, if you want to really look at collaborating and sharing of data, and the goal is to solve some problem, then the problem often happens to, one of the first problems is how do you discover valuable data sets? How do you know this kind of data is suitable for my use case? And we've seen some examples. If you look at, say, some of our customers who were working in industry 4.0, you have lots of sensor data from various sources coming in. But then if you look at the operations technology engineer who actually has the insight, if they want to use the data, they don't know actually how to plumb it. They do not know what data means, what formats they are. So you can think of it as data everywhere, but not a drop to use. You need the right plumbing and the right amount of information about it to be able to utilize it. Another example comes from the healthcare and life sciences. So, when you try to do disease surveillance, like when you're trying to predict, the spread of a disease, if you like, you find that oftentimes there is a fishing expedition to get a lot of good data, because you get data, maybe you want to get data about demographics or about, about weather. And these are, some of them could be not good quality, some of them may not be the right granularity, and so it takes months sometimes to be able to get the data, even when you are able to access the data. Another example from agriculture, the value in this case is from a collaboration with Digital Green and CGIR, is that you really want the deep and most advanced research results that you are learning from agriculture and and research to actually affect the smallholder farmers. And so you need to really be able to connect the dots and link the data so that they can benefit from that in real time. And so all of these kinds of questions of understanding what the data means, is it suitable for my problem, and what else is it related to, and what could be, the challenges if I actually use the data. So the question is, how do I get to that, right? How do you know the meaning of the data? And so if you think about it, how do we know the meaning of a word? We understand it very much in the context of its usage. And maybe a same word might be used in different situations, and they may actually have a different meaning. Likewise, the meaning of data lies in its use. So for instance, a meteorologist might look at this weather data, rainfall, wind speed, and temperature in order to be able to build weather prediction models, while a scientist might be using it to look at the spread of dengue, and see that the dengue actually the mosquito population increases, and that the relationship is very closely related to wind speed. And you might discover that, and you want to find the right data which actually has the right kind of wind speed measurements that will allow you to make these predictions. Now, an agriculturalist might use it for a different purpose to be able to predict crop yield. So the question is, what does the data actually mean for me? So the way you can understand the meaning and both the value of the data is by being able to understand its use. So how do you get that kind of information about its use? And this is where metadata about that tracks the usage of data and tracks the lineage of data as it is being utilized can help us learn about the meaning of the data and how you can actually make use of it, and maybe figure out what other data is relevant for your purpose. So this is a project that we've been working on, and it's an innovation project called Project Data Map, which is really trying to give you a way to navigate a map of data and figure out what is really useful for your purpose. Now, I talked about lineage and being able to having that kind of information to be able to understand that. And of course, you might be thinking that that's not something that's easily available. And so that kind of leads me to this larger initiative that we have. And the point I kind of want to really leave you with is that in addition to sharing data, sharing of metadata is also very important. And so this is the idea of having what we call a self-learning data foundation, which sits between the workflows, and this could be AI workflows, could be simulation, HPC workflows, and then at the bottom you have the data. And there is this layer in between that is actually, we call this a common metadata framework, which will track the data pipelines and tracks and learns from this history, and then uses it for a variety of optimizations. Discovery of data was just one thing, but being able to help you use the data, or being able to help somebody clean the data, or being able to optimize the pipelines, a lot of different things are possible. But the heart of it, you need a foundation which will let you actually share this and track this metadata, and then it can be used to speed up scientific discovery. And so, so I was talking about this metadata sharing. So, I used to work on the Linux kernel a long time back, and one of the things that really sped up the open source community's pace of development was when Linux actually stepped back and wrote Git to be able to share code and the changes that are happening to code. So the common metadata framework, the idea is to do the same with respect to metadata. So not just code, but data, but also metadata should be shareable in a Git-like fashion, and it should be distributed. You might actually do part of a workflow on one side, part on another side. Maybe you create a model in one place, you optimize it and fine-tune it in another place. You should be able to use it across, all across. And that gives us this kind of a metadata repository that can be shared very broadly. Another example here is really an application of of the federated version of CMF, which actually lets you exchange this kind of metadata across different sites. So maybe you are this is an example from a Fusion data platform. So maybe you are you would have different kinds of processing and models. Some of this is going to be running on a supercomputing center. Some things might be running on a cloud data center, and then there might be individual developers, and you want to be able to share not just the data, and actually to think about models also as data, think about the intermediate artifacts of data, and being able to actually know where it came from, so that you know that you can trust it and use it for your purpose. Uh, and another example here is beyond just this sharing of data and components, you could actually use this kind of information to be able to accelerate the development of models. For example, if you're training and retraining AI models, sorry, I'm just stopping a bit because I forgot to start my timer. Could you please tell me how much time I have left? Okay. So let me move ahead. And so the thing here is that if you are, so what you can do here is, besides accelerating the model development, sometimes when you have simulations, you can accelerate these simulations using an AI surrogate model And now the question is that surrogate model also has to be retrained as and when you get more new information. And then in order to do that, you probably want to train that model with simulation results. Now the simulations might be very expensive. And so you want to be able to select the right simulations that you want to do. So this entire pipeline of picking the right data and actually even deciding what data to use or even what data to generate, and the whole experimental process can be optimized using a framework like this. Another problem that you might face is that, yes, we have all of this connected and you can actually find and share this data. But then how do I really, if you are a scientist and you want to really, you're imagining yourself in an AI assisted future, and you really want to be able to go and ask a question of your data, any question about your data that helps your discovery process. And this data is all multimodal, right? There are 3D structures, there is image data, there is time series data. And so maybe if you really were looking at this, you can look at this kind of a query, which is an example of of a search for a protein that could be actually attached for the COVID virus. And so it's actually trying to understand that query, but it's under the covers, it's actually calling these AI models to be able to actually search, generate these kinds of structures. It's trying to actually use a 3D prediction model, but when you're experiencing it, it's a very uniform experience, and it is going and searching through your entire data to do that. Now that's besides that, however, there is even further and where people are thinking of this. And so now that we are in the era of chat GPT and foundation models, and if you look at the foundation models today, they are really good at a lot of the tasks with respect to general text and general, and they're also now starting to ingest a lot of domain knowledge. But if you're looking for scientific discovery and these kinds of deep tech use cases, then you have a lot of other multimodal data, and they are all of these different kinds of data. And so there is this effort on in the Trillion Parameter Consortium to see if you can build a single foundation model for science. And this is a pretty big endeavor. So you would have like 30 trillion tokens it is trained with. A model of this nature will probably take a few months on an exascale system to train once you've got all the data right. And then once you have that, then it could do also the usual tasks that you can do with a foundation model and just adapt it to these tasks. But it can be, you can start to use it for all various kinds of scientific discovery. So that's just early days on that. But I kind of want to end with this quote here from this paper, which Rick Stevens also mentioned, is that this, even though we are trying to do all of this with AI and foundation models, there is a lot of challenge, because you really want to have, you want to be able to generate the hypothesis, but you also want to be able to verify the hypothesis. And we need to deal with a lot of the issues of, whether you call it hallucinations or trustworthiness of these models, and also be having a lot of transparency on how these models are built and how these, the provenance of the data sets that are being used to train the models. And so there is a lot of interesting, dimensions there, and interesting, days ahead for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Suparna. It was a great talk, especially on the Git for data. I would want to know how this is available for others. So I think it's amazing work on open standards. So
Yeah, there is a this link I have here. Yeah. Which, yeah, there's a Git link here. Yeah. It's an open source project.
great. I think it's a wonderful work you guys are doing. Thank you for it. Uh, Next, let us now hear from Dr. S.S. Iyengar, currently the Distinguished University Professor, founding director of the Discovery Lab, and director of the U.S. Army funded Center of Excellence in Digital Forensics at the Florida International University, Miami, on how catalyzing innovation by unleashing the potential of industry academia partnerships could help India and deep tech outcomes. Dr. S.S. Iyengar has been among the list of top 2% cited scholars of Stanford study this year, awarded Lifetime Achievement Award for his contribution to the field of digital forensics at the Interpol Digital Forensics Expert Group, among many more. Dr. Iyengar, welcome. I request your words of wisdom, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, and it's an honor for me to be here. And I've seen real growth of the collaborations. Of course, my the last 5 decades I spent in United States, and one of the things, how exactly you can unleash the potential of industry academic partnerships in India is what the real theme of my talk. And I know that the time that I've been allocated is 15 minutes, not enough. But let's go to the next slide. And I sort of rush through this, and there are a lot of things who have helped me, in the funding, gotten millions of dollars funding, and essentially bringing the collaboration between the industries and academia. So one of the interesting things, go to the next slide. What is very important is we are able to sort of develop or enhance a curriculum that is driven by the industries. It is not driven by just universities. This is the general theme of all the universities across the country, like Stanford, MIT, and I had many opportunities to be part of some of those places as a speaker, collaborator, and so on. So, what is very important is to enhance the collaboration is to see, for example, what does for example Google wants, and also it depends upon the topic of importance also. So right now we are interested, and at least I can give a couple of stories. I go to the next slide. Yeah, slide 3. um, so there is a beautiful book I have written. Please take a look at it, and all this is applies to all the industries, because this book is a new book which is coming from very soon, in the matter of couple of days now. The book essentially presents the multiple facets of deep learning networks in the design, development, and deployment of these networks. Because right now I feel so sad. Sometimes people use the word AI and machine learning, not knowing how to do it, how exactly you can structure it, and how, for example, you can actually develop toolkits and develop a technology for many applications. There are a lot of applications the previous talker, Dr. Bhattacharya, presented. So there are many health related applications. So in this network book, we have given really an outstanding toolkit, and it is all kind of engaged in the context of how it can be used. Now, the other thing also, I'm a theoretician, so a lot of people talk about theories of machine learning. So there's another book which you wrote, and so this is another mathematical theories of machine learning, which essentially gives the foundational science and application. Go to the next slide. So the focus of this talk, okay, yeah, there are a lot of places I've interacted, even in India. Currently, I'm a distinguished university professor at NFL, National Forensic Science University. That is that kind of data that now we are tackling. Chanakya University, and there are other universities, Jain. The other thing also interesting is I worked at many national labs around the country and the globe. So the most interesting thing is to see how we can develop this collaboration. That's going to be the focus. I think let's go to the next slide, and please go to the next slide. So basically it's all driven by the development of a workforce and investment, and how you can sort of get the capital market based on the industry requirements, and then how you train. So, but in India, looking at it, I mean, this is a great India with lots of brilliant talents here. In fact, many of my 65 PhD students came from IITs and all of the other universities too. I was also a professor at Indian Institute of Science, Dhawan professor. So the global R&D expenditures tripled from 726 billion in 2000 to an estimated 2.4 trillion in 2019. So that clearly shows there is a real capital market around the globe. Go to the next slide. So there are things like in United States. I want to give a couple of stories with this slide. I developed a robotics lab. The robotics lab was developed based on the funding from national labs and from the industries, like the industries like Raytheon. So we developed a lot of research agenda for them in the context of autonomous driving that you see that developed by Tesla and all of those things. We developed a lot of software for Raytheon, one of the very famous algorithms, which is being again funded by industries to universities. Brooks Iyengar fusion algorithm. I saw a slide from Professor Bhattacharya in my previous one. So there is this fusion of data which is coming from various different. So how do you do that? So how do you do that means, like whenever the industry wants to collaborate with you or with your program, one of the things which we need to do is to see how exactly we are able to target their requirements. The industries, different industries have different requirements. Like Raytheon, they do a lot of the R&D work, in target tracking problems and so on. Then I should be able to sort of see and focus and develop, a program or a research thing and how it can be targeted. So by doing that, we were able to generate millions of dollars. And I think Atul Batra knows about it. He was a student there in 1995. So we developed a robotics lab not from funding from universities. So only thing they gave me space, and even for that space I got to give funding. The funding essentially comes by targeting industries, national labs in an area which is of very high importance to them. Like for example, I worked on autonomous vehicle. We talked about computer vision problems. And now, for example, all our focus has been is how we can use AI and machine learning to enhance the ability for the software developers and the toolkit that we can provide, and they can use it. Like IBM Watson, we were responsible for that, because in fact one of the products that we developed for them, we were among the one in the top 25 ranking or not when I was at Louisiana State University. Go to the next slide. So there is a lot of this potential is there, and here is a very nice, interesting. I'm not going to go into that. You can get all these slides from my friends here. So there is this interaction is going on good. So now let's come back to India. What is that we can do in India? Also we can do a lot of things. Go to the next slide. The reason for that is, like my interest now is in the area of quantum computing. So one of the work we are trying to do with NXP, there is a very good company in Bangalore, and how, for example, we can develop quantum encryption for several of the images globally, and then these algorithms that we have developed, is a joint program, and it is hopefully it is going to be funded from through Department of Science and Technology right here. And then there is also an opportunity at National Science Foundation, which has a lot of nice interesting collaboration. I saw that Nasscom has started an initiative with MIGHTY program. In fact, NSF and MIGHTY program, we are now just starting with National Forensic Science University. There is a proposal under review. So this kind of vibrant ecosystems where academia and industry collaborate is very, very important, because we do not have money in United States for the universities to fund. So we had to get the funding from industries by defining new problems. So through that, National Science Foundation, Department of Energy, there are many, many agencies. They have a lot of joint programs with India. So I've been exploring that through because I'm also a professor in Institute of Science. I'm also a professor at various universities. So through that channel, I'm able to work with some of the industries here and then see how we can apply and start collaborating and developing on many of these things. So that's very, very important. Now, there are two things which I am kind of focusing. Go to the next slide. One is to make sure that the successful factories, all that, what can we deliver? What is the system that we can have so that it can be used for real-time application? That's the whole idea. So that's why the toolkit book we have written is to show that how some of these toolkits can be used for enhancing and getting the data that is being trained for many of the real-time applications. So, but this cannot happen in 1 year. So the long-term academy and industry essentially gets trust and creates a stable platform for innovation. And that's what I'm really sort of looking at various industries in India and various universities also. And through our universities in the United States, we can cater a lot of interest in research and development. And at the same time, we have to develop a product that is deliverable. People can use it. An average man can use the system. So many of the forensic analysis systems we've been able to develop they have been used, and it is, I mean, some of these things are jointly with National Forensic Science University, where we have these kind of software which are scalable software. And forensically it is an excellent software in terms of the accuracy and the development of forensic. So the target also has changed now. That's another data that is abundantly clear to me. Next, in the 5 to 10 years, that is going to be the cyber forensics. The hacking is very important, but you see, the idea is how can we develop products, and that cannot be done at the university level. So there are a lot of universities here should be able to integrate with many of the forensic science university and develop some of these programs. So we are in the process of doing that. And so there is a lot of research output that can be translated into patents, and then it can be translated and scalable to overall globally around the world. Okay, go to the next slide. And I think and there are some notable studies, like IIT Bombay and Reliance Industries. We've been able to incorporate an Indian space research organizer. I think when Dr. Kasturi Rangan was the chairman of that, we were able to develop a lot of software in those days, remote sensing, through remote sensing, and BHEL and IIT Roorkee. And of course, there are other places like Infosys and academic partnerships. So there is a lot of these opportunities that are available, and we should be able to see how. But again, they are not, many of these well-developed industries, like I saw that ISRO has funded 90 crores or something like that to Indian Institute of Science. But I would like other universities also to get involved through Nasscom and see what they can integrate. I mean, Indian Institute of Science may focus on research, where I knew that I was a part of a faculty there, but at the same time, developing the end product is very, very critical. So that's where I think we can get the talents in some other, second tier institutions, where there are a lot of talents that are available, and for some of these programs. Okay, go to the next slide. And so the building a culture of innovation is, but again, as I said, it's a combination of both the developing the foundational science, and then developing a critical thinking, and then how it can be applied to many of these industries. But now at the same time, we need to be able to train our students to the requirements of the industries. We can have a very theoretical content in the computer science program and say, I'm interested in developing an n-log n complexity. No, that's good, but it is of absolute. So we had to look for an interdisciplinary application and develop program and see, for example. So Nasscom has been an excellent platform, and I don't think I've seen that something very similar that even in India. So there is a lot of innovation, cultures and centers and national centers of excellence that can be done. And I think India has done very well. But I think now, since I'm focusing on the forensic analysis, we can create innovative hub like forensic silicon hub, in the data that we are providing. And I think under the leadership of India today, go to the next slide, there are a lot of good things that are happening. And I was a kind of a part of some of these things. Smart city machine, yes. We developed, for example, in Miami. Miami is, a crime-ridden area in Florida. So we were able to develop and convert that into a smart city, through the funding. And then on the National Science Cyber Forensic Laboratory, and jointly with some of these kind of, organization like NXP, as I said. So some of these things are really remarkable, and there is an ample opportunity to improve. And of course, I can give you hundreds of stories of my own, support on this at many of the places, with the industries in United States. But now we are focusing mostly on some of the Indian universities and national labs, and hopefully that will be a remarkable thing that we can achieve. Go to the last slide, perhaps. So you can see in many of these things, especially on the National Cyber Forensic Laboratory in Hyderabad, I've been a part of some pro discovery company where we are training students jointly through some of the funding that we can establish, so that the workforce or the capacity development through these companies like NASForge and all of those companies that are listed under that, we can develop smart force, none other than anybody in the world. Because I believe that and and I think these basic academic incubate and I think we can develop a lot of stuff, and I think things are going on. So there is certainly a great opportunity for all of us to move. And again, I want to thank Nasscom and Mr. Batra, who was my actually student long back, an excellent student who has done so well, for giving this opportunity to say a few words. And I know the time is too short, but there is a very successful path forward, especially AI and machine learning, how that we can use it. I mean, along with Chat GPT, I have given a lot of talks, a lot of good things have happened, but in any event, there are a lot of things which we can also see down the road. Again, I want to thank you, and I don't know whether there is time for any questions, but you can certainly send me an email. I will respond, and we can have a conversation on that. So finally, the conclusion is, with this koala, innovation culture that sort of I hinted on many of these things in the Indian context, we can prepare something for every small idea can be commercialized technology in the context of transfers, technology transfers, startups. And of course, what is very important is you want to make money also, the patent. So the patent, of course, I don't know much about Indian patent. They are maybe as good as even better. But US patents, when once we have it, there's a lot of global visibility is there, and which we can certainly work on that also. Okay, so thank you. And again, as I said, for this opportunity to say a few words. In fact, I just I'm actually in Bangalore now. I just came, flew this morning, so I will be here for still a couple of months, and I would be happy to talk to anybody. But there's one company, NXP, is a company which I'm associated, in working on and bringing up some chips, quantum chips. So we'll see how it goes. There is a proposal on the way. They're trying to define the intellectual, you know, intellectual rights of the universities involved. Thank you, industries and universities. Okay, this is all the thing which I want to talk. I think I was able to communicate what is needed, what is important, and I think we are already in the progress. And this Nasscom is an outstanding platform, and I may be happy to use it. And there are many universities in the country which can help us to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Any
Dr.
questions?
Anga.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a wonderful talk. Your wisdom is what we require. We have the energy, we need your wisdom. And something important that you did harp upon is developing research agenda for industry that can be commercialized. That's critical
Yes.
piece, right? And the other thing is the trust between industry and academia. That I think is a very important thing. It also might be more on the need basis. Um, Now today the ecosystem is fragmented. It's in pockets. As soon as it reaches through a system like Nasscom to tier 2 universities, I think we are looking at large scale, and we need your wisdom, sir. Thanks for spending your time, and then we'll be in
Thank you.
touch with you. Thanks, Dr. Iyengar. So the next discussion is moving towards the public infrastructure. Given the gestation for deep tech developments, many of them need to be developed as public goods. Now, what is it that is available as public infrastructure for nurturing deep tech in India? To discuss this, I welcome Sujit Nair, co-founder of the Foundation for Interoperability in Digital Economy for creation of decentralized digital economy ecosystems. Shrikant Chunduri, founder CEO at Framebrick and Agnirva.com, focused on building high impact, large scale, community driven programs. Sujit is the one who co conceptualized the idea of ONDC and onboarded the first set of market participants on ONDC. He also co authored the ONDC strategy paper and was instrumental in setting up of ONDC Limited. Welcome, Sujit. Over to you, Shrikant.
Thank you, Avinash. Thank you, Avinash. So, hello all again, and welcome to the fireside chat. Today, we'll be discussing about building public infrastructure for nurturing deep tech as part of the day 3 of Nasscom Future Food Summit. And Avinash, as you have introduced, Sujit is the CEO and co-founder of FIDE Foundation. So, it's the genesis author of backend protocol, which is the basis for ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce, Honest, Open Network for Education, Skilling and Training, and the likes. Each of these is a very built to scale, decentralized network, and they all have just gotten started. So glad to have you here, Sujit.
My pleasure. Thanks, Srikanth. Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to be here.
So, Sujit, as I just mentioned, our focus this year is to build deep tech quotient in India, right? And when I say in India, it's in India, but it doesn't have to be restricted to India. It can be built even for the world. So, I want to start off by hearing your thoughts. I want to discuss with you on what it takes to build public infrastructure for nurturing deep tech, not just within India, but globally. So, it would be great if you could share your initial thoughts about public infrastructure. How do you go about it? How do you develop it? Who develops it? And to help our listeners, most of whom are decision makers, either as startups or enterprises, how should they think about this journey?
No, great question, Srikanth. Firstly, I don't think I'm a deep tech expert. I'm more of a tech generalist than a specialist, as I can see from some of the work I've been doing. No, I think when you asked me to speak about deep tech, I was first wondering, is it just about AI or beyond? I think it's a very interesting way to characterize deep tech, at least for me, from a limited learning and understanding that I have done of not just AI, but beyond AI, like quantum computing, and somebody's talking about nuclear fusion and all that. I think what we're essentially doing with all these nature of technologies is to create this sort of abundance, significant abundance, where, for example, AI is sort of, especially Gen AI, is talking about creating an abundance of creation, quantum abundance of computing, nuclear fusion, somebody's talking about abundance of energy. All of this happening where abundance of a resource, which is because of the significant cost reduction, the marginal cost of generating this is zero or getting close to zero, which is great. I think it's all these technologies, over centuries, including electricity, was creating some sort of abundance, and these are all civilization scale shifts that we are seeing, which is fantastic. However, when you look at abundance, it doesn't always mean it's effective, um, scalable, equitable, inclusive at population scale. Um, how do we make sure that these technologies actually serve humanity in the way that's inclusive, and particularly now also serve the planet, given the context of sustainability and climate crisis that we're going through? So that is where I think there could be an opportunity to have this conversation on having an infrastructure thinking, or particularly the digital public infrastructure thinking, or DPI, that India has been very nicely been putting together in the last decade or so. The fact that infrastructure thinking, DPI thinking, I'm sure we must have heard this several times, but just to put this in context, essentially about not thinking about building solutions, because in digital, I think most often we're building solutions. We've been going through that since the beginning of the internet era. We all are building solutions, but how do we, for a moment, step back and have a mindset which doesn't think about building solutions but building infrastructure? And building infrastructure is not something that we don't know. I mean, we've been building roads and bridges and railroads across the country, and we know that it's critical to have infrastructure which is public and open, that allows for whole lot of economic development innovation to happen, as we have seen through centuries. We have done that fairly in an analog world where we built roads, and no one road is private to anybody. You don't build a road just because your house here. You don't build a private road to go to school or a private road to go to college. It's all shared infrastructure that we use, so that somebody can build a bus, a school bus, an auto rickshaw, or somebody can even build a Ferrari. But none of these solutions come with the road. The road has to be created for these solutions to come on top of it. Similarly, I think if you were to apply a bit of that thinking in the digital world, I'm not too sure if we have done enough. After, of course, internet, which is probably the biggest infrastructure, digital public infrastructure, or GPS, or emails, or even our GSM standards for mobile phone, I don't think we have done enough. And India is offering this unique model where we are looking at creating infrastructure beyond what was available, beyond internet, and that's where you see examples like UPI, significant population scale adoption with 10.5 billion people, bringing 500 million people into transaction economy when it comes to payments, people actually doing payments with their phones. I think this is a great example of how do you create technology that does not by itself become a solution. UPI was a protocol. By UPI by itself did nothing, just like how internet by itself, by design of internet, did nothing, but it allowed a whole multitude of solutions to come on top of it in terms of UPI apps, which are several of them, and all of them are market innovations, private innovations using digital public infrastructure, allowing you to do that. That way of thinking is also the thinking behind ONDC. I think you briefly mentioned that, Srikanth, Open Network for Digital Commerce. As to how do we imagine a similar model of inclusive commerce and using protocols like Beacon that I was a part of, I'm still part of. So that thinking, if I were to take that and apply on some of these emerging tech, deep tech, like in the area of AI and all that, and I've been listening to some of the fascinating conversations before us, I think somewhere it'll be important to think about how do we sort of nurture this abundance through an infrastructure thinking, whether it's about how do we think, specifically in the area of AI, how do we create some form of common rails when it comes to maybe around the data side, around the whole the LLM and the modeling side, and the whole thing. I think how do we think about that? I think that would be an important conversation to have, because we don't want a situation where we have abundance but only serving a few people, but we have this sort of abundance serving a lot of people, and that's where I think the way of thinking of infrastructure is very useful.
Interesting. So, just to summarize what you said, I think some of the key takeaways for me have been that when you think infrastructure, you usually think of creating a lot of components. So it's on the surface, it's to use your analogy, it's like creating patches of tar and road, right? Until you join them together, and then until you put up a policy system of how to use roads, and unless there is training,
Yeah.
that road is going to be pretty useless, and you have to do a lot of planning for the roads. So if I were to, one of the takeaways for me at least is that abundance, there is abundance, creating a lot of infrastructure, and then making sure that's equitable and usable by various stakeholders in the ecosystem. So in that sense, abundance is a necessary but not a sufficient condition. Just by investing in a lot of independent silos, you're not going to achieve much. You would have just
Yeah. Interestingly, if I can, sorry to interrupt, Srikanth, I think
yeah.
you're saying even with the DPI thinking, we are also thinking about creating what is essential. I think infrastructure builders don't think about what is sufficient, they think about what is necessary. Yes, we all need an ID. Yes, we all need to find a way to have payments available. But we don't think of the sufficiency of how exactly will a person, say, in remote part of India, will use payments. There is affordance that comes with it. For example,
Yeah.
will the person type if he is not literate? Will the person speak into it? Those are the solutions that will come under the underlying infra, which somebody else will think about. They will solve for some elements of sufficiency. But in general, as an infrastructure, you just need to look at what is necessary and then allow a whole lot of people to come and build on what should be the sufficient, contextually relevant solutions that caters to everybody's need.
Yeah. So, so you also talked about building, putting this DPI thinking into people, right? So that you're not just creating silos, but an overall system that people can be part of and use. So here's a little bit of a trick question on DPIs, right?
Yeah.
We have digital public infrastructure. Assuming we lived in a world with no internet, would what you have said so far in the principles, would they still hold, or are they something to do only with the digital world?
I think they do. I mean, let's take the analog world and let's talk about how energy distribution took off, well over a century. I think somebody thought about creating public utilities. It was not a private utility. The entire, from generation to transmission to distribution to actual consumption, is sort of federated, decentralized, um, um, sort of a multi-stakeholder thing, and it's not one company controlling the entire pipeline in any part of the world. The fact that we all agreed to say let's use alternating current and not direct current, and then on that sort of a thinking or schema or a
Yeah.
standard, everybody said let's visualize how do we electrify the whole world. I mean, that is an example of an infrastructure thinking. So that, I think, it's always been there. I think what I in fact say that internet was extending that. I don't know if it was done consciously or not, but the idea that internet by itself is just about creating that distributed access,
Yeah.
is that infrastructure thinking. Internet did not foresee, let's say, a chat GPT coming, or an Amazon
Yeah.
coming, or an Uber coming, or a Namayatri in Bangalore coming, or an
Yeah. These were
ONDC.
created by end users, so to say, of the internet by
That's right.
themselves, right?
I did not foresee any of that, but it allowed those innovations to happen, and the innovations to sort of diffuse into population scale. And that's, I think, it's an important, I think, useful analogy to look at whenever we think about any new technology that we are going to be embracing.
Yeah. No, interesting. That's a very encouraging takeaway, because while we are talking about deep tech and public infrastructure, most often the discussion just goes into tech and ML. So my final takeaway from this is that thinking of public infrastructure creation could be applied even beyond deep tech, but it is something, and it's a thinking that has existed probably in different silos. Internet, as you say, just amplifies that whole thing, right? So that brings me to a kind of an operational question, right? So
Yeah.
obviously this is a very large journey, right? Infrastructure, and as you mentioned, initially, that each stakeholder, each user of the internet or in the business world does what they do best, right? There are entrepreneurs creating products and services. There are governments. There are businesses.
Yeah.
To take your road analogy, right? A car maker may or may not worry necessarily about the road. They have to stay focused on making the car, right? A tar creator, or has to worry about that. And there are thousands of such people who participate in a road building exercise and in the utility of the road. Now, so obviously this very clearly seems like a multi-stakeholder journey, right? If we talk about public infrastructure in deep tech, but who would you qualify as the critical stakeholders who are responsible for building and the critical beneficiaries? Or is it that every beneficiary is a stakeholder? How do we define it? It's way too complex. So is there a thinking you have to help us understand? How do you prioritize these?
Yeah, I think so. When you come to infrastructure, I think the stakeholders on the stakeholder side. Firstly, I think it's important to think about um people. Okay, keep people in the center, and as ultimately, all these technologies has to sort of precipitate into improving people's lives, all kinds of lives, and now we're talking about improving a situation of the planet. So it's just people and planet would probably be the center of this discussion in terms of who the
Yeah.
beneficiaries are, but these technologies actually create value not just for people but also for people who are offering solutions to these people, right? So corporations, governments, everybody, I think they're all sort of beneficiaries to this. In terms of stakeholders who come to make this happen, of course, I think more than me, I think others have said it better. I think it requires effort from academia, from research and development, market, the civil society, volunteers. Many of the efforts that you've seen in India around digital public infrastructure has come through largely with a lot of volunteering talent and not-for-profit efforts. So it requires a collective effort of all this. But I think what is critical is to find a way to bring all them together, because normally when you have a multi-stakeholder thing, sometimes it's very difficult to bring all of them onto a very one seamless sort of a fabric to collaborate, co-create. It does splinter away into silos. So how do we do all that? So I think it's important therefore to have a very clear sort of a way to bring them together. I mean, generally, I've seen somebody putting together a vision, articulating into some sort of a framework that brings all these people together and start participating. And that could be somewhat top down. And I think government is in a great place to do that.
Yeah.
UPS started as a consultation paper, working with not for profit to make sure that there's some thinking going behind that. But it could also be bottom up. It can also be bottom up, where probably some of the efforts that are happening in silos sort of come together before they hit sort of critical mass to agree on, hey, is there a need to create a shared infrastructure? So, I mean, if everybody does that one thing well, somebody may be building the LLM models well, somebody may be actually thinking about bringing the rich data set, somebody may be talking about reimagining compute that some of these things require, all of them, but agreeing that is there a common set of standards, specifications, interoperability, and a framework to work together so that each one is amplifying others' effort and not spiraling down. I think that where I think the trick is in getting multi-stakeholder, not just identifying them, but also make them
Yeah.
work together. And some shared framework would be useful in that context.
Yeah, and I think what's encouraging is that you said that this is not necessarily a top down starting from the government, but it's equally likely it can be bottom up. So for the people who are listening, who are potential volunteers and enterprises, I think they could also participate. They don't have to wait for someone else to take an initiative.
That's right.
Great. I think we are out of time, but this has been deeply insightful. Thank you so much, Sujit, for sharing your idea and principles on how to build this public infrastructure for
Well,
tech.
thank you so
Thanks.
much. Really
Thanks,
enjoyed this.
Sujit. Thanks, Srikanth.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
It's good to hear about the necessity and sufficiency of digital infrastructure. It's very critical, and what is being done to adopt digital infrastructure. So the next discussion is to harness a long-lasting outcome from deep tech, we need to nurture deep tech talent in a scalable way. Let us hear from Kirti Seth, a business leader with over 30 years of rich experience in entrepreneurship, management, and driving change. She is now the CEO of ITES Sector Skill Council at Nasscom. Let us hear on the strategies for deep tech skill development and growth. Over to you, Kirti.
Thanks, Avinash. Namaste, everyone. Great to be here. I think before I really launch into my speech, I should just clarify what SSC NASSCOM is for those of you who don't know. So we are the certification body for IT skills. SSC is a part of NASSCOM. We drive the talent charter for NASSCOM, and we develop the job standards for all the IT roles and ITES roles in our sector. Bet most of you didn't know that, but it's something that I think it's really important to understand that that's what NASSCOM does. We consult with industry, we look at what are the job roles of the future, we construct the job standards and then offer certifications against those. Those are government approved. We also are the implementation arm for all the government skill development schemes. And we run the FutureSkills Prime platform that's funded by METI and implemented by Nasscom. So that's something that you can all be proud of, because Nasscom is nothing if not a confluence of all its members. So this is something that is really doing well, and you should go check it out if you haven't. So my topic really is about nurturing deep tech talent. And I think, like the previous speaker before me, I have to say I'm really not a techie, but I think we've been reasonably successful in joining the dots of how to make the skilling ecosystem work for our industry. If we look at the deep tech ecosystem, it's a whole lot of companies which most of them are not very large, but growing very rapidly. And I think it really came home to me about a couple of weeks ago. I was invited to a conference called Technology and Bharatiya Bhasha. I knew nothing about technology and Bharatiya Bhasha, but I checked out with my colleagues at Nasscom, and I was amazed to hear about all the deep tech startups and companies that are working in this conversational AI, NLP, human translation, voice localization, those kind of platforms. And there's a whole lot of tech which is involved in that. But that's just one problem set. So if we want to make these 3,000 deep tech companies move to 30,000, our job as SSC is really to create an enabling framework. So that's what we do. Apart from running the learning platform, which is FutureSkills Prime, we work with the government to create that policy framework. Very recently, we contributed to the report, which was the skilling framework, which was in the report for the National Program for AI, as to what kind of strategies we should have. And we sounds very simple now, but it took us a little time to get to it, where we said that not everybody it's not a common brush that we have to look at how to train for deep tech, how to train for AI. And when I say AI, I really mean all these digital technologies, because AI never really works in a silo. AI is combined with big data, it's combined with cloud computing, it's IoT, it's all these technologies that we now talk about on a daily basis. So we looked at it as a 3-layer construct. We said that we need to look at a bottom layer of all. That is something where everybody needs to know what technology can do for them. I mean, after all, we're a digital democracy, and the previous speaker before me talked about the Beacon Protocol and the ONDC and ONEST and all these wonderful things that those guys are working on. Then we have the many layer. Many layer is in the middle. We think we should be aiming to skill about 20 million people in that many layer. These are the people who are application builders, who will leverage the foundation models and the algorithms and all the tools that are available to build solutions on top of all these Gen AI tools and all these low code, no code. I mean, so many platforms available now. And then there is the few who are going to be at the top of the heap. They will be the world-class software developers, the designers, the architects, and this is the group where most of the deep tech companies will emerge from. This group needs deep domain knowledge and as well as a supportive environment to encourage them to incubate the ideas to make a business. And why do we need them to get into a business? I mean, eventually, if we want to realize value of deep tech only comes when we create IP, and IP will have value only if there's successful business at the end of it. So that brings us to another insight, which is that not all deep tech talent needs to be deep tech. Deep tech companies also need many people that will help them build a successful business. And that could be as simple as programmers, those could be people who do marketing, those could be people who run projects, those could be people who run finance. I mean, we're hearing so much about how all companies need to have a governance structure, because so many problems have come up because the governance is not okay, or they just haven't had time to look at their structures. So there is a whole ecosystem that needs to be created around a deep tech company, which allows them to be successful and to thrive. So what we do, as FutureSkills Prime, what we realized was that these companies, the deep tech companies, don't really come to our platform to learn, because typically that deep domain expertise is sitting with the founder or the person who created the program. But where they do struggle is to find the right talent. And we had come to this conclusion that an offshoot of FutureSkills Prime should be a portal that we call the Talent Connect portal. This is a Nasscom portal that has been created where skilled people who've got certified on our different skilling initiatives are available. Companies can come and post their jobs for the particular skills that they require on the platform, and hopefully we will be able to do the matchmaking for them. This is a nice little sweet spot that we discovered, where smaller companies don't really have a platform to aggregate, where we're really focusing on tech skills. So that's what Talent Connect portal has been set up. It just got launched a couple of months ago. We have about 100,000 people on the platform now. On the deep tech skills, I think the numbers are still small, but what we really want is for companies like yours to post their jobs in the portal, and that creates a virtuous loop where learners who got certified see that these aspirational jobs are available, they get encouraged to learn, and that's what sets the cycle going. So in conclusion, I would say that the deep tech ecosystem, what we do as Nasscom is first and foremost build an enabling policy framework by participating in different forums with the government, different types of skilling for different audiences. We need to do some crystal ball gazing so that we can be prepared for the future. You can't just create skills in a vacuum. For example, right now, the big thing is working on semiconductors and quantum, because that's what's really going to lead to jobs in the future. We had the similar situation for blockchain a couple of years ago, and now that is not really in a crystal ball gazing phase, but we every time new technologies will come up. A big thing that's coming up is how to use the tools that are built using AI, because so many beautiful applications are being built by what is readily available. So that's really in terms of how we nurture the deep tech ecosystem for talent. I wanted to give a little overview and maybe leave a little time for questions, because what I find is that very few of our members, and especially in this audience, know what Nasscom is doing around this. We had, when we looked at it, and I mean, if somebody is listening to this and is able to actually comment on it, we said that we're going to look at 4 categories of how the impact of AI will play out in the workforce. One of those, the first category was where a huge amount of disruption will happen. Those will be the low discretion, the clerical, secretarial jobs. Look at translators right now. Today, when I just go to Microsoft Word and I just click on translate, I get such a beautiful translation of any document I have in most of the major Indian languages. So these will get highly disrupted, and that's where we call that we have to adapt. Which jobs are going to have to adapt to the new world of work? Then we look at evolve. These are moderate disruption where we will have functional specialists, IT developers, and we're seeing this, right? We're seeing people using tools like GitHub Copilot to improve their productivity just to write code. Here, the existing job roles will evolve from maybe, say, a graphic designer to a AI-enhanced UX designer. That's the other thing that's happening in the deep tech system. It's not just the engineers who are going to be looking at technology. The technology spectrum has become broad based because there's all this beautiful stuff available, applications that you guys are building. When I saw something like Devanagari, or what kind of work that they do in terms of voice localization and human translation, it's fascinating. So these are the kind of things that will fall in the evolve category. There will be AI assisted job roles like customer support or AI powered, there will be chatbots, but even customer service representatives will be supported by AI. There'll be core AI job roles where they will go into software development. There will be an ethics officer. There will be responsible AI specialists. Then there'll be coexistence, where technology and people will be working side by side. This will be in the area of, say, legal advisors, which will use AI platforms to make their work more efficient. But there's a high amount of discretion involved over here. So things like project managers, architects, legal advisors, they will coexist. We see low disruption happening there, 5 to maybe 30%. That's a wide range, I know, but crystal ball gazing is like that. And then where there's almost going to be very little disruption, that's the human jobs, where plumbers, electricians, surgeons, people who actually work with their hands, where AI will probably not disrupt them too much. So this is the categorization that helps us to identify what are the skills we should be looking for in the future. And as a standard setting body for the IT industry, we work with industry to help us in this crystal ball gazing. I have a board which is comprised of Nasscom members, which is the governing council for the Sector Skills Council. They give us the first level of inputs to say, hey, this is what is going on. We work very closely with the Nasscom's insights team. They are the ones who are putting out all these beautiful reports. And we're so proud that most of Nasscom's reports are actually now being quoted in most government statistics, and they rely on them. So we have a huge responsibility to make sure that we say we do that right. What we read in the reports is what we then, as the SSC, try and validate at what we see on the ground. We are currently working with about 1,200 colleges. We have about 1.5 million people on the FutureSkills Prime platform. We do 300,000 IT certifications every year. We work with about 300 companies on the platform and another 100 companies off the platform. So we have a lot of on-the-ground interaction as our ability to then validate that what we are reading in our reports, is it actually playing out in the real world. So as far as the deep tech ecosystem goes, I think it's the frameworks where we really have a role to play. And these are important because it decides where the government is going to spend its money. If we say that we need a million people at the top of the pyramid of our few, many, all construct of the AI skilling, of the tech skilling pyramid, it's not that much if you really think about it. What is the investment that will be required to make it happen? We can think of looking at funding it. We can think of asking the government to put the money. where it's required. If you say 20 million, obviously it can't be done. But if we size the problem, we're able to come up with solutions. So that's really what we're doing on this ecosystem. I'll stop here. I think I'm out of time. And if we have time for questions, I'll take them. But otherwise, thank you so much for allowing me to speak with you.
Hey, Keerthi, thanks. Thanks for sharing the multidimensional view of deep tech talent requirement, right? And the kind of infrastructure you guys are building in order to bridge access as well as aggregate needs. That's wonderful. And also the policy influences that you're making to ensure that there is sustained talent availability. That's wonderful. One question: how is all this affecting the cost curve? How are you helping bend the cost curve?
Avinash, the cost curve is really a business decision, but business decision finds its way into talent because for our industry, talent is the raw material. We will see the cost curve getting impacted by the productivity tools, obviously. So we will see that definitely the cost coming down over there. But then the cost will go up on the other side, where as the skills that you need become more and more complex and more scarce, shall I say. Because as AI and these technologies take over across all industries, it won't be just the tech companies competing with each other. It will be the non-tech companies jumping in too. So, I think if you're skilled at this moment in these technologies, this is your day in the sun. I think while we may be reading a lot of doom and gloom about what's going on in the tech industry and what's going to happen, I don't think the situation is bleak for anyone who has the right skills.
Thanks, Kirti. Thanks for sharing your views, your time with us. Uh, I
Thanks
think
a lot.
yeah, we'll
Bye.
move on to the next discussion. After discussion on nurturing talent, we move on to our next discussion. Continuous learning and evolution is key to sustenance, growth, and impact. Given the rapidly evolving deep tech landscape, let us discuss how we can stay relevant. And I invite Anuj Gupta, founder and CEO at Gradient Advisors, a major thought leader in AI. He owns the AI function end to end, right from vision, strategy, roadmap, technical modeling, execution, productization, GTM sales, and setting up a world class team as well. Along with him, Tanuj Bhojwani, who heads People plus AI and is a board member at Digital Public Good Alliance. Welcome, Tanuj. And to moderate the discussion, I invite Srikanth. Over to you, Srikanth.
Yeah. Thank you, Avinash. So, welcome aboard, Anuj and Tanuj. Uh, Very exciting discussion and an exciting time because this is literally the last session of our 3-day summit, Nasscom Future Forge. Just to bring you up to speed for the listeners, this was a 3-day summit, and on day one, we talked about research and collaboration and how to actually generate both deep research as well as research applications. Day two, we moved into specific products and what kind of markets exist for those products, and we had a lot of entrepreneurs come and talk about it. Day three, we panned out and we started looking at, hey, what does this ecosystem look like if we are to build a deep tech quotient from India? So research products ecosystem, but this session is probably the most critical because we're going to talk about one component, which is the most critical part in an ecosystem, that is people. So I have Tanuj and Anuj. Tanuj heads People Plus AI initiatives and is also the author of the book The Art of Pitfulness, which he co-authored with Nandan Nilekani. And Anuj is the CEO of Gradient Advisors, and he authored a book called Practical NLP, which is published by O'Reilly. So, Tanuj and Anuj, let's a quick lay of the land question, right? So, there is a lot of FOMO about deep tech. November 30, 2022, less than a year. It's not been a year too. It was a black swan event. ChatGPT 3.5 launched, and the world just changed, right? And clearly, the obvious, aside from consumers, the obvious companies that benefited are the whole FANG companies, and new companies came up, OpenAI. So it's very clear that companies which are into deep tech are deeply impacted by this. But for anyone else who's not in these high tech AI based companies, um, is this FOMO that they are feeling? Hey, there's something happening in AI. There is something I'm missing out. Is this FOMO? Is it really justified, or do you think it's a passing fad for them and then say, hey, just chill out, what's going to happen? Tanuj, what do you think?
I don't think it's a passing fad. I mean, first of all, if it's a fad that's been going on for many decades, and every year we get hopeful about what AI can do, and then a little bit tempering of reality and expectations come in. However, this time is different, right? And we are seeing this now in the last year, like you said, just a year ago. What has happened is that we've managed to create an interface. Where you can give language as the input. So this is an IT conference in Nasscom, everybody knows this. We managed to make language the interface of interacting with computers. So you talk or you type in chat, and on the other end comes out answers, of course, of a very complex human reasoning. That's what we see on ChatGPT. But one of the most powerful things we are seeing is on the other end comes out code. Code may not be good enough for you to copy paste and simply use. Instead of you looking up Stack Overflow, now ChatGPT is looking up Stack Overflow in some sense. But it is very powerful. In the most recent paper we saw where NVIDIA, Anima Anand Kumar and Jim Fang, they co-authored this paper where they showed that they used LLMs to write reward functions for classical RL, reinforcement learning algorithms, to train robots on dexterous tasks, right? Like spinning a pen with your fingers kind of task. That was considered extremely difficult, extremely impossible, right? So the number of benchmarks that we are crossing of what computers can do, not by explicitly coding, but by having AI do it for us, I think we're seeing an acceleration of an acceleration, right? Like I said, second order effect. And therefore, I want to say this time is real. It will affect you in one way or the other, because the delivery mechanism, unlike a VR glasses or whatever, is not that somebody has to buy a new computer. Yes, maybe some GPU, some compute increase somewhere, but essentially everything you need to run AI application, they already exists. You already have data stores, you already have computers, you already have the internet, and people are already using them. So it will just blow up from here is my opinion. But I'll ask Anuj to comment. I think you're on mute, Anuj.
Anuj, I think you're on mute. We can't hear you. You're still on mute.
Oh, okay, we lost Anuj.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah. To build on that, I think if you to sort of think about where it's going, right? I think that sort of all of us should really look at our lives as if we are aliens and we've entered this world for the first time, and ask ourselves, where is the drudgery in my life right now, right? Where is it something that I am an army of humans is doing the same thing that will go away, or where I am doing something where I'm really not in the field. I'll ask, hey Anuj, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Am I audible?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, wonderful to have you back.
Sorry for this. This, I mean, in the world of AI, this still happens. I don't know who can. I think Tanuj put it beautifully, right? I mean, this is not a fad. This is gonna change the world. I think only thing that is not known is how fast this is gonna change. Is it gonna be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? Right? There are people who now genuinely believe that AGI is a possibility, and it can happen in 3 to 5 years time, right? And that's gonna be a tremendous shift. So this is not a fad. This is gonna impact a lot of businesses, a lot of people in day-to-day aspects and not just esoteric works, right? And one needs to be aware and one needs to be prepared for it. The better you are prepared, the more likely you are to deal with this, right? And this is equally or all the more true for businesses, right? Today, you could be a very large enterprise ruling your market for last 30 years. A bunch of kids sitting in a corner can overnight disrupt you. Right? They can burn down your business literally, right? So you have to act fast. And you also at the same time need to be very careful that you can't expect very early results also, right? You need to be mature enough to know that this is a very complex technology. It is not that OpenAI built Chat GPT over time, right? Of course, right? I mean, the real timelines are not known, but this could be anywhere between couple of years to what now, right? So this is gonna change the world to the level of not just enterprises and businesses, even at the highest levels of governments and nations, right? And tomorrow you could very well have a body within United Nations trying to
Yeah.
govern AI. I mean, that's the kind of ramifications that are very much possible.
Yeah, and I think which brings I think point Anuj you were making earlier, and what Anuj you were supporting to is that it's not a change that has happened; it's just an event and it's done. This is going on right now, which brings us, I think, to the crux of this discussion. It's about continuous learning, right? Now, let's talk about that learning, and so obviously, learning has two stages. You need to know what to learn, and you need to have resources to learn, right? And obviously, equally importantly, it's a risk. So it's an investment. Learning is an investment into yourself. But when we talk about continuous learning, for someone in the audience, let's say who's not, let's look at two different types of people: people who are hardcore ML researchers and engineers, and then there are product managers, business owners, folks in supply chain, folks in agriculture. They are also impacted, as I hear from you. But how do, can you give us some framework to think about what comprises this learning, and is it continuous? How periodic? Should you actually stop doing everything and then just get into an AI company and take that big leap? How do you think about it, Anuj? Your first thoughts.
Uh, I would say two ways, right? One, having a awareness of what is happening on the front end. You may not understand all the nuts and bolts of it, but at least be aware that something like this has happened, and being able to maybe also think how can I leverage it, right? So think in a classical, I would say, API sense. Something is available, how can I leverage? So think more on the leverage point of view, right? So this is more from a consumer point of view. If you are more of a builder type, I would say you have to understand that algorithms will come and algorithms will go. Today, Chat GPT is everything. I won't be surprised if from a year from now we're talking of something completely different, right? But what's not going to change are fundamentals. So if you're a builder, make sure that you understand fundamentals very well. You understand the thing in its nuts and bolts, right? And not just be enamored by all the lingo and all those big words that get thrown around, right? And uh, because that's very important. So these are, I would say, have two extremes. Uh, from a framework point of view, I have personally found Twitter as a great way to keep myself aware. Right? I mean, the rate at which all of this is happening, I believe me, even for somebody who has been in the field for 30, 40 years, also it is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
At least the framework that I have used is I have curated my Twitter extremely carefully over many years. And today, I mean, I think I'm at a point whereby if something major has happened, my Twitter stream will tell me. If it is not major enough, it will not show up. So that's how I have gone around it.
Yeah, wonderful. That's a useful tip.
Yeah.
Tanuj, what is learning, and tell me what you think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think learning is eventually over time. And first of all, I completely agree with Donald says, right? Like depending on where you see yourself in the ecosystem, you really need to be able to understand something to a certain level of depth. And one way I think about it is that do you have a good conceptual model of what it is, right? A lot of people who get worried and talk about risks, right? Also think of AGI as a anthropic kind of being, and it's like a god, and therefore it will be. I need to regulate AI as if it's
Yeah, we
a
have the movies to
Godzilla.
blame for it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. As if it's Godzilla who will sit down with you, but Godzilla like, but also will sit down with you at a negotiation table and you tell it, oh, you will not do this and will not do it, right? So we have these weird conceptual models about this technology, and I love what Anuj was saying. So to building on that, right? If you're a product, this thing GPT is a great black box that for some questions breaks it down and carefully gives me selected answers, right? Like it reasons for me. If you are a somebody who's trying to do this reliably for business and some especially on something like critical like healthcare or agriculture or whatever, then you should know, boss, this is a a generative pre-trained auto-regressive language model, right? Like all it does is predicts the next token, right? So you need to understand what it must have seen to predict the next token to say this and not something else. And unless you understand at that level of nuts and bolts, like Anuj was saying, you will assign to it some features or qualities or properties that doesn't have, and that will lead to you and your customers and your business probably being at risk of like failure, that you're like, Arey, but why did it not work? So build that conceptual model, and the only way to build that conceptual model is to get your hands dirty. And the good part about AI is whether you are just sort of interacting on a chatbot to all the way to go fix the code, because so much of it is open source.
Yeah.
Train it yourself, fine tune it yourself, do something yourself. It's available at every level of degree you can get involved, and you can move from one to the next very easy.
Interesting. So just to quickly, I have three quick takeaways from what you both said, right? One, I think the reason this is such a significant event which has changed everything is because language, this has become language as an interface, right? And the way to survive at a philosophical level is to change your conceptual model and your understanding of the fundamentals of what's going to run what we call as AGI, right? And most importantly, to support continuous learning, this change is going on. It's not done. It's continuing to happen, right? So we have a couple of minutes. So let's do this, right? Obviously, let's take the whole FANG, NVIDIA, all of them out of the equation. Can you, from your specific vantage point, Tanuj, you're at the forefront of people and AI in people plus AI, and Anuj, you have a lot of students who have read your book and actually created applications based on their learnings. So, what are the fields or sectors that you think, like agriculture, healthcare? Do you think one is more likely to experience this kind of rapid and radical change, and or do you think it's too unpredictable right now to make a statement on it? Anuj, from your vantage point, what do you see? Do you see any specific fields that are more poised to experience this?
No, I believe every possible field, every possible vertical, right, will undergo a massive transformation, right? And we are already seeing a very interesting thing, right? I mean, one of the very interesting phenomena that have come out of generative AI is these models can also think, they can dream, but it seems that their creativity is different from human creativity. Now, who could have thought of this a year back, that creativities itself are of different kind, and machine creativity could be different from human creativity, right? So I think it's for anybody's guess to be able to say like which of the fields, right? But wherever the human knowledge is not a lot, right? So I would say law is unlikely as much as compared to maybe a couple of other sector where a lot of things are pretty much manualish, right? Or you can write SOPs for stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right? So those kind of are likely, but then again, I mean, you never know where surprise can come from.
Okay. Tanush, do you share the same? Is it all
Yeah,
sectors all
that
at once? Yeah.
all sectors all at once is probably, I mean, like a speed, right? Because I was talking to somebody about customer service as an example. And while you think, oh man, I've heard the best speech synthesizers, I've heard accents, they're conversing, lag can be brought down with a local model, right? So sub millisecond lag, and I mean, sub 500 millisecond lag, you can get down to. But the point is, your customer service agent is not just, talking back and answering questions from a script.
Yeah.
They are also manipulating systems in the backend, which are all separate systems. So just like the cloud shift took 10, 15 years, because when you actually get down to it and move from one legacy infrastructure to a new infrastructure, there's a lot of unexpected surprises. So I do think that the bottleneck of AI in every field is not necessarily the capability of AI. It's like what Anuj is saying. It's the workflow and what all do you do in there, and how many of those steps already exist in systems amenable to upgrade to AI, right? And that if you can crack that, you can actually crack billions of dollars, because every industry will go through that change. But if you know how to rewrite the system, sometimes upgrading is a thing, sometimes starting from scratch. So if you can figure that out and figure out which one to do, you probably are the next whatever Elon Musk right there.
Wonderful. So just to summarize, right, I think given that almost every single industry that because both of you are pretty unanimously vocal on all sectors are going to be disrupted. And I think a simple way to look at it could be that all sectors have been built by humans with human intelligence. And now, since we're augmenting human intelligence with AI. So it's only natural that pretty much any sector that has been built by a human gets disrupted, which is quite a bit of an interesting insight. Thank you for sharing. I think we are out of time. So thank you so much, Anuj, and thank you so much, Anuj, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, Shrikant.
Yeah, thank you, Avinash.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. So continuous evolution means staying relevant to the problem in hand most closely. So moving on from there to the last discussion today, talent is both an underserved and overserved word. Deep tech requires both the best as well as the best fit of skills. How are we placed at talent acquisition in the deep tech era, and how do we find gems in the competitive landscape? Let us welcome Varun Nagalia, Global VP HR Tech at IKEA, with focus on technology agenda for people operations transformation and to create digital technology strategy for reward, talent, travel, and internal communication, along with Sunil Gupta, co-founder CEO at QNU Labs, with the mission of accelerating the world's transition to quantum safe security. Let's hear from them now.
Some introductions to start with. So if I've got the mic, let me start. I'm Varun. I am professionally leading currently HR technologies for Inca, an IKEA retailer, and also helping setting up their digital capability center in Bangalore. My past experience has largely been across two organizations, General Electric and Unilever, and a background running global transformation, global services, and recently bringing innovations in the employee experience space. I'm passionate about public speaking, experience design, and gamification. And that's me. So let me hand over to Sunil.
Thanks, Varun. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sunil Gupta. I'm a co-founder and a CEO of QNU Labs. My background is largely in product development and product engineering. Uh, I have spent 3 decades in the industry, and this current venture that I'm leading is actually about is a much higher purpose, where we are trying to put India on the forefront of deep tech technologies. We have a belief that time for India has come, where India has to now go beyond services and really become a superpower in the deep tech. And the QNU Lab is a idea that we started in 2016 with the objective of building India's first deep tech company in quantum tech. So we have been around for 7 years now. Yeah. So Varun, a very interesting work that you're doing. Please share that. I understand that you're trying to set up a GCC, right, in for IKEA in India. Uh, uh, there are just so many GCCs already been set up by so many multinationals in India, right? So how do you see the talent acquisitions, and what strategies are you adopting to really build a great talent pool?
Thanks, Sunil, for the question. I think first of all, we need to acknowledge the fact that India has a massive pool of talent in digital and in technology space, especially when it comes to deep technology or deep tech. I think we are a little bit blessed differently from a point of view of the industry that we operate in. We operate in retail, and in retail as an industry, competitive edge using digital and deep tech technology can come from anywhere. So a large part of our focus really is to build our own technology, and that really helps us from a competitive landscape perspective as to how we sort of acquire talent. For us at IKEA, I think we hire largely for values. We, of course, technology and technology mindset and technology depth is a given, but we hire for values, which then really allow us to bet on people and help them grow. Uh, for us, when we think about acquiring talent, and we are, with a big transformation that we have done in our digital landscape in Inca or in IKEA, we've we are now a relatively young organization, so we have a plethora of opportunities for us to pick from. So for us, it is really about finding the right talent, hire for the values, paint them the picture of opportunities, and just make sure that people can link to the value that they would generate. So for us, what we build is deployed internally, and people can see whoever we're building is not just a product that we deploy and somebody else uses it. It's we use our own product. So for us, getting to the consumers is that much bit easier, and getting that feedback instantly is that much bit easier for us. And then finally, we are a flexible organization which allow people to try out different things. So that's a really good value set that we have in the organization that we leverage on. But then, Sunil, if I can flip the question back to you, you've been in the industry for a very long time and you've seen both startups and the enterprises. What is your experience around that?
Yeah, first of all, Varun, I just want to say that all of us are a great fan of IKEA, right? I have so many products, so I think we all understand the innovative products that IKEA bring to the table, right? See, when we started a DeepTech, honestly, I got three feedback, right, from the several people that I talked to. They said it's not a great idea. In fact, some people said it's a stupid idea, right? You won't get talent, you won't get funding, you won't get even market share. 7 years later, we approved all the three things wrong, right? And the most thing that I'm very proud of is the talent part, right? So in a deep tech, as you know, that it's always a long gestation period, and especially the deep tech that we were working on, we call it a 4 phases: the proof of science, proof of tech, proof of business, and proof of scale. So for us, initially 2 years, it was very important because we were going to look at quantum physics and really understand head or tail of it, and then try to see how do we make a product and IP around it, right? With using that. So we needed a core team who has a sufficiently good experience, uh, who have the knack of uh, solving problems, right? And with patience. And so that's what we did is when we started this, we said the foundation has to be very solid. So we said we're going to go ahead, and these people are the ones who will not only join for technology or for they need to they need to join for a vision, right? And a passion to what they're doing. So we were very particular about forming a core team that largely came through our own network, right? And so that was the important part, that we get the right people who are very much glued. And I remember that I had spent so much time with our key people, our chief growth officer, chief CTO, and so on, where actually we brought them on board after months of discussions, right? And only when they were fully excited, they fully understood what we're trying to do, we brought them in. So I think deep tech, getting a talent is definitely one of the most important thing, right? Because that is what is fuels the whole engine, right? So that's the whole idea, was that we get this thing, and once we get a core team in place, then these people, we trusted them that they will hire better people than themselves, right? That's the whole idea. If every layer keeps hiring a people better than them, right, then that is where we and we also said that we will have a mix of, right, a senior people, right, who have experience, and also young people who are very hungry, lot of energy. And today, a lot of young people, they come up with a lot of ideas, right? They are very innovative guys. And so actually we said we will set up this experiment, and I still call it a genuine, a great experiment that is work in progress, partial success. But I think that we feel very good about the way we approach the whole talent acquisition part. So Varun, the other interesting part comes in, right, in our business, is that getting talent acquisition is one part of it, right? But then how do we keep them motivated? How do we keep them excited, right? Because it's a long gestation period, as we're talking about, takes 4 or 5 years to build IPs and that innovation and so on. So if you are not able to keep people excited for a long period of time, that then you keep replacing people, and then new people comes in, it doesn't help in any way. So what are your thoughts and strategies that you have adopted uh, for this particular key aspect of it?
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting question, and if I work a lot with human resources as departments in my past, and currently work as well, and I can tell you this is the holy grail question. I'm also very proud to say that from a technology perspective, we don't have that significant churn at our organization here. But then I think if I were to make it more generic and not specific to an organization, for us, I think our funding, our sort of founding belief, if you would, from our founder really is that most things remain undone. Whatever we do, there is more to be done because the future is glorious as we work towards it, and then some more after that. I think there are 2 or 3 things that I would like to touch upon. I think one is the environment of experimentation, because as you mentioned, right, I think the ambition that you started with, the mission vision that you started with over the past 7 years, trying to prove everybody that, you know what, no, there is a market here. It's about our ability to experiment. It's about the ability and the environment to allow people to experiment different ideas, and not just one idea, if you would. I'll give an example. This is one of my large organizations. I won't take names. We had acquired a small startup, very, very successful startup. And one of our very senior leader was in their board meeting when they were discussing some ideas. And there was an idea A, idea B, and idea C. And then they discussed, and then they all went away and said, look, let's look at the results. So after the meeting was over, our senior leader asked the founding chairman there to say, so which idea did you go for? And his view was, what do you mean? Like, but you had 3 ideas. Like, we'll try all of them, and we see which one sticks. Right. So I think the idea, to your point, of new ways of thinking, we actually have to embrace them, allow the ideas to prosper, allow failure without any reprehensions around that, if you would. But then also allow people to use tools and technologies. For example, we are experimenting with the new Microsoft Copilot for developers, if you would. So flexible projects, flexible ways, but then most important for us, as you say, for people to come in, and we don't want a quick churn, is really around how do we link what people do to the value that they're generating? Because end of the day, everybody will feel motivated if there is a tangible contribution they have done, and they have left an indelible mark in whatever they have done.
Very
But
good.
then let me also flick this back to you, right? Because you're in a slightly different industry and slightly different space, if you would. So how do you go about doing that, Sunil?
One of them, though our industry is different, but let me tell you, I think the principles remain the same, right? Uh, I think you touched upon environment is very important, right? Free environment where actually, as I said, we got some of the folks from who are doing PhDs, right? Fresh PhDs and fresh masters in physics, right? From good colleges. They were never seen a career, right, in India to after PhD doing a physics and going into the physics area, right? They used to go into different areas. We brought them in, we gave them opportunities to innovate, right? And of course, when you innovate, it means you are free to make mistakes, you will learn. But idea was that we will give them an environment. Environment is not only about processes, tools, systems, and freedom, but also the peers, the equally capable peers, right, who will work together, seniors from whom they can learn from, and give them an environment where it said, we have time, don't worry, right? You go and build IPs and do innovation, uh, write patents, right? So you'll be surprised. We had the guys who was a second year into his job and he did a first patent, right? And he was very excited when you Google it, is find his name there, right? And that was the idea, was that if you are at the cusp of deep tech and you're doing a great, cutting edge work, then the excitement of building that technology, getting your name there, have an IP and patent into the name. But we didn't stop there. We said a lot of companies can do this, but I'm going to give them an opportunity to say, now you have built a product, you're going to go to a field, and where we are doing a field trial. You go and see how your product working, learn by interacting with customers, see the good and bad things about your product, come back and then see. We were doing a field trial for a defense in somewhere in Ladakh, and we sent 15 people there, right? And a lot of those guys were very young people. We said, you go there, don't worry. And these guys learned so much, and when they came back, they were so excited because they're connecting that with the end result, right? And really seeing their tech working in reality, and then seeing a customer feedback. It was an absolutely different type of exposure. So I think I will just add to what most of the things you said. Innovation, environment, allow them to do mistakes, learn, but lasting exposure, right? If you expose them to newer things, which normally we say is only meant for senior people, but if you break those barriers, I think it really creates wonders, right? And other important part is somewhere, I think that in deep tech companies, startup company, another aspect of it, where especially for young people, that how do you build some sort of a knack of risk taking, which means that you're ready to forego a short-term benefits for a long-term rewards, which not only in terms of monetary, but in terms of learning. Because as you stay longer in a product organization, your learning become exponentially larger, right? So I think that as a role model examples and for people to really see, I think that is what my view is that makes the whole difference.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So now I think interesting part that I'm very eager to ask you, uh, which we don't do much, but I think is very important for our audience to know from you, that how a deep tech company use a deep tech to really transform their whole operations, right?
Oh yeah, it's a very interesting question. Look, I think I don't think we are a very deep tech product organization. I think we build our own products and we want to leverage as much deep tech as possible. But at the core of it, we are a retail organization here. And I've worked with large organizations. General Electric at the time when I was working was about 300,000. Unilever was about 150,000, and IKEA is about Inca is about 177,000 people, predominantly in retail in this organization. If you think about where retail overall has a significantly higher churn probably versus a lot of other industries. So we absolutely leverage deep technology, some that we have built ourselves and some that we buy in the market. For product organizations such as yourselves, as you sort of build more models, etc., around that, is really helping us understanding how can we do higher volume hiring and bring efficiency into our own processes, if you will. For example, I'm a huge fan of gamification. We are looking at how do we sort of leverage gamification for do competency assessments. It's fantastic when you sort of think about how deep technology and how deep tech algorithms can map human behavior out, if you would, and then say what would be the best fit for the organization and the propensity to lead and the propensity to stay in the organization for longer term. But then finally, I think also understanding that great talent can come from anywhere, both external as well as internal. So how do we sort of create an internal marketplace where technology can map, ping, and surface non-usual career opportunities for people to say, hey, you've been building something like this here, but what about building something adjacent to that here, which you would not normally think and associate? But then, technology and the deep tech can really help us look past our own biases around some of those things, and that's very, very helpful for us, and significant value that we feel we have added using some of this technology as well. But how about you, Sunil? What's your view on this?
Yeah, I mean, very interesting thought. Though, of course, I'm a big fan of AI. Last assignment, actually, we did a AI product. We built an AI product, India's first AI product in cybersecurity. Uh, but having said that, I have dabbled more with human intelligence in CUNY Labs. And idea was that because hiring a talent and retaining them is really the most important thing. I think one of the most important thing. So what we have done is that we have spend time with people, right? We spend a lot of time with people even before we hire them, right? I'll give you an example. One of the guy we hired a few months ago, a senior guy, he's a software architect, and we have been talking to him for 8 months, right, continuously, and he has done some work on his own in quantum tech. He was a very nice guy, good skills, very good aptitude, but we wanted him to be make sure that he's not just doing a jump from one job to another job, and and he's not just taking it just because we're giving him a 10% extra, right? We just wanted him to really come back to us with a lot more insights and a lot more clarity in why he wants to join QNU and how it will help his career, and how would it help him contribute to us and so on. And we worked with him for a long time. I spent time, our CTO spent time with him, and eventually he went and joined somewhere else, right in between, because he was doing that. And but because we were constantly talking to him and we were showing him a different vision and what we are doing, and he was constantly following us, within a couple of months he came back to us and said, hey, I think I did a mistake, I want to come back and I want to look at it. We still took 2 months. We're saying you just want to see so involving them at a very deep level, right? Sharing openly what we do. A lot of things we share, of course, IP we don't, but we are very open book in terms of what are we doing, what is our vision, where are we in our product roadmap. Call them over, show them our products, right? Walk them through our technology, and then people come back and saying, I want to do this, right? And I'm committed to doing this. So I somehow felt that deep tech is important. Startups, they sometimes don't have the money like IKEA to invest in a lot of AI tools and so on. Of course, there are so many freeware tools also available. But I think we spend a lot more time in more spending human intelligence, spending time with people. And but having said that, now we are planning to implement some of the tools and processes as we scale our organization,
Super.
right? So is the AI plus HI to me is the is the key actually, yeah.
Super. I think we're about time, Sunil, but this is super helpful insights. If you would, really appreciate your time here. I had really
Same
good
here,
time
Varun.
in this chat as well.
Enjoy talking to
Uh,
you.
but shall we just hand over to Avinash then now? So thank you very much, and I'm sure there will be opportunities for us to interact more. Thank you.
Thank you, Varun.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you, Sunil. It's been a wonderful day three of Nasscom Virtual Summit with learnings from ecosystem to empowerment. Learning from how the government views at building IP and knowledge-based companies to how investors look at technology modes, global relevance, open systems and standards, public infrastructure for deep tech, and the multi-dimensional needs of the talent. Added to this, how problem solving, industry academia collaboration is so relevant by staying close to the problem for continuous learning. A special mention to Nasscom team Nihal, Sahil, Rohan, and others for putting this together. Wonderful work from the volunteers Atul, Chalaya, Amol, Arun, Mangesh, and many other background supporters. By bringing together visionary leaders, cutting edge technology, and a diverse range of sponsors spanning various categories, Nasscom Future Forge 2023 has showcased the immense potential of deep tech innovation. We thank our esteemed MC and our invaluable sponsors, including Optum, Health Tech Partner, and EYGDB in the premium category, Intuit, NetApp, SAP, and Microsoft in the platinum category, HPE and Odessa in the gold category, Natix in the silver category, EU India InnoCenter as our cross-border collaboration partner, UNest as our investment partner, and Walmart for the support with badge and lanyard. We also extend our gratitude to all participants for joining us in this inspiring journey to drive innovation, empower startups, and shape the future of technology. Your collective dedication has not only made this event a resounding success, but also a testament to the remarkable entrepreneurial ecosystem and innovative spirit that defines Nasscom. Together, we've set the stage for a bigger and more innovative tomorrow. At the end, picking a line from Hollywood, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. Hoping for a vibrant, deep tech enabled India in the years to come. Thank you. Have a great evening. Signing off.